The fun life of a troll in the Marvel Universe. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 376. The universe is a big world. Come if you dare. Do you remember those little gadgets Sherlock and Tony scratched from the Pictou family's treasury? At first, Sherlock thought that collecting these things was like the banknotes scattered by robbers when robbing a bank. Even if the amount was small, it was a huge sum of money for the two people who didn't have much money in their pockets. No matter how small the mosquito legs were, they were still meat, right? Sherlock didn't dislike it anyway. But what Sherlock didn't expect was that this thing was not some scattered banknotes at all, but her mother's scattered solid oil. It was not until he returned to the black market that Sherlock knew that the full name of this thing was Interstellar Universal Compressed Energy Block, which was the universal energy source for most spacecrafts and weapons in the universe. About 3 small blocks could supply a small spacecraft with a month of navigation. At first, Sherlock didn't understand why the Pictou family would put this thing in the vault as a treasure, but soon Sherlock figured it out. According to Thanos, the resources of the universe are limited. The more lives there are, the fewer resources there are to share. Therefore, for the continuation of the universe and the peace of life, he wants to destroy half of the life in the universe. In this case, there is nothing wrong with treating this thing as oil. After all, even those who have not left the earth know the importance of energy. Otherwise there would not be moles scrambling for oil all over the world, right? Since it is oil, there is no cheap thing. These things may not be favored by big guys like Thanos, but Sherlock doesn't mind picking up bargains. Relying on these solid oils, Sherlock only bought a few, and easily got the lightsaber and helmet he wanted, which can be regarded as completing his small goal. As for Tony on the other side, Tony is even more excited than Sherlock. Especially after the last holy relic of the Pictou clan was sold at a sky-high price. Tony was even more excited. He started the shopping mode in the black market and started buying all kinds of things. Of course, Tony's main purpose was to upgrade the armor and the spaceship. Anyway, after staying in the bedroom for a few days, Sherlock almost didn't recognize that this thing was his spaceship when he walked out of the cabin. The first thing that changed the most was the weapon system. Only a small part of the weapons on Earth was retained, and most of the rest used the top energy weapons of aliens. The second was the upgrade of the energy supply system. Under the premise of retaining the basic energy supply of Tony's large arc reactor, a new energy supply system using interstellar universal energy compression modules was added. The two systems cooperated to provide sufficient energy for the spaceship. Finally, there was the life support system. I don't know where Tony got this thing back, and I can't even figure out what the principle of this thing is. As long as you can find a recipe and import it into the machine, you can print out a delicious dish that is exactly the same as the recipe. To be honest, when Sherlock looked at this thing, his cerebellum almost atrophied. The person who invented this thing is definitely worthy of being in the Imperial Temple. After having this thing, Sherlock and Tony's living standards obviously began to rise sharply. That guy eats a variety of things. Especially Sherlock. In his previous life, Sherlock ate all the northeastern dishes written in the criminal law. Sherlock even felt that he had gained a lot of weight. Of course, while enjoying life, the two did not forget to do the tasks. After all, even if the lovers had already made their first pot of gold by picking up purple sweet potato essence, there was no such thing as a cheap spaceship, so they would not eat up all the money. Thanks to the reputation of the first mission, the two of them completely transformed into 5-star good citizens of Los Santos in the next mission. That guy had fought, stolen things, robbed people, and was a big shot. He completely transformed into an outlaw and learned the true teachings of Zhang San. Not to mention how many blacklists the two had been on. Just being chased on a daily basis was already a common occurrence for the two. Of course, in this process, Sherlock and Tony also thoroughly witnessed the biodiversity of the universe, and they could encounter all kinds of weird tasks. One of the tasks has left a deep impression on Sherlock and Tony until now. This is a task that a cosmic tycoon specifically named 2 people to complete. The cause of the matter is that the tycoon got divorced and the child should have been raised by the tycoon. However, the divorced tycoon's wife was not a good person. She took most of the tycoon's property and her daughter to hide in a strange planet in the universe. The reason why this planet is called strange is that any creatures other than female creatures are strictly prohibited from existing on this planet. That's right, it's just what you think. No matter what kind of seed it is, no matter whether it has independent consciousness or not, as long as it is a living thing, only females are allowed to enter. It stands to reason that such a tough attitude would still be dealt with by those cosmic lunatics, but this female planet has the support of a large cosmic force, and its own strength is not weak, so it is also peaceful. The tycoon's request is to ask Sherlock and Tony to snatch his daughter back. The reason why he specifically asked Sherlock and Tony to complete the task is probably because the tycoon has a little idea. After all, Sherlock and Tony's nickname Planet Destroyer is here. If they really angered the two and destroyed the planet, then the bitch would have no place to hide and he could get his daughter back. To be honest, when Sherlock and Tony saw this task, they wanted to refuse, but they had no choice because the rich man offered too much. As long as the two could complete the task, the rich man was willing to give all the stolen property to Sherlock and Tony. Tony roughly calculated that, as long as he completed this order, he could replace the main gun of the spacecraft. By then, this thing would not be a flower stand with the appearance of a star destroyer, but without the strength of a star destroyer, but a serious star destroyer. In the end, Sherlock and Tony gritted their teeth and stomped their feet to take on this task. The first step to complete this task is to enter this planet that only females can enter. For this, Sherlock and Tony almost scratched their hair bald and couldn't think of a way. After all, the defense and detection of this planet are really strict, and if they are caught, the consequences will be extremely serious. Every month, there are news reports of males captured on this planet being executed, so the two of them couldn't help but be careful. After thinking it over again and again, Sherlock and Tony finally gritted their teeth and drank the polyjuice potion that Sherlock took out. It can only be said that Sherlock's polyjuice potion is really awesome. The mission went very smoothly. A confused little girl and a spoiled rich lady were no match for Sherlock and Tony, two universe Zhang-san, and they were taken out of this planet in a few moves. The reason why this mission impressed the two of them is actually very simple. Her high heels and skirts are not something that humans can wear. God knows why there are such anti-human things on an alien planet, and they are necessary attire for humanoids to enter and exit this planet where only females can enter. Sherlock did not write an email to object, but the reply from the other side was that this is a unique talent of women, and through this behavior, 65% of males who want to sneak into the planet can be well eliminated. The most important thing is that this requirement is only imposed after you pass the level. There are no regulations on what to wear when you enter or leave. This made Sherlock and Tony angry. God knows how many times Sherlock and Tony sprained their ankles when they were secretly practicing in order to avoid being caught on the spot. The most fucked up thing is that after the two of them went through so much hardship to bring the person back, this unlucky rich man actually got back together with his ex-wife. It would be fine if they just got back together, but he also wanted to cheat Sherlock and Tony's commission. Sherlock could tolerate it if he and Tony were just a strange play in your torturous love, but if you want to cheat me of my money, that's absolutely not allowed. Fortunately, the caliber of Sherlock and Tony's guns is very large. When faced with a gun barrel that is almost the same size as his head, the rich man still followed his heart and paid Sherlock and Tony's bill honestly. Chapter 377 Species Diversity. Facts have proved one thing, that is, Sherlock said that the rich man's mission was a bit too early. Just a few days after the rich man's weird mission, Sherlock and Tony received another mission that looked normal on the surface, but actually challenged Sherlock's understanding of species diversity. The mission was issued by a race called the Woodmen. Note that it was the Woodmen, not the Treemen like Groot. Sherlock also saw what the so-called Woodmen who issued the mission looked like. It can only be said that they look similar to humans. Apart from the skin color that seems to be the same as Dabba at home, the extra eye on the forehead, and the horns on the head that look like wood, these so-called Woodmen actually look similar to humans. The reason why Sherlock was so active in wanting to follow Tony To see the woodmen who issued the mission was actually very simple, because the woodmen were a weird existence in the entire universe. Their love for wood is simply ingrained in their DNA, and in their daily lives, they can't see any other products except wood. The creations of the woodmen have always been based on a concept: if wood can be used, then use wood. If dead wood doesn't work, use live wood. If live wood doesn't work, then consider using steel. But even if steel is used, it has to be wrapped with wood to make the steel creation look like it is made of wood. If it really can't be wrapped, then a layer of wood grain should be added to the surface of the steel. The most typical example is their spaceship. It stands to reason that spaceships, which need to travel in the universe, have nothing to do with wood, but the spaceships of the woodmen are the wonders in the universe. In the woodmen, cheap spaceships are made of steel with a wooden shape. After all, spaceships are cheap, and they need to rub against the atmosphere to enter and exit the planet. If they are made of wood, they will burn out sooner or later. But the more advanced spaceships, the spaceships with anti-gravity systems, are all wrapped with real wood on the outside. After all, they can enter and exit slowly, and there is no need to rub against the atmosphere, so it doesn't matter. Sherlock was naturally curious about this strange flower in the universe. However, after seeing the woodman, Sherlock's evaluation was that the technology of this race was so crooked that it was out of bounds. This time the mission was actually very simple. The woodmen were too busy to handle it. Sherlock and Tony needed to go to a planet to help them recycle the wood they had planted. Of course, they might be resisted by the local natives in the process. Doesn't it sound strange? It stands to reason that a race that loves wood so much should be as peace-loving as the elves, but the fact is that the woodmen are well-known robbers in the universe. Because they love wood too much, the woodmen have developed a huge tree, which they call the World Tree. This tree is too tall and will absorb a lot of nutrients from the land on the planet, causing a large area of land to eventually turn into a desert. The most important thing is that this world tree has a certain degree of self-awareness and can carry out a certain degree of self-defense. For the races that have entered interstellar civilization, the so-called self-defense of this thing is just a matter of firing a few more shots. But for the races that have not entered interstellar civilization, this thing is in existence that must not be provoked. To be honest, after Sherlock received this mission and saw the wooden people, he felt an inexplicable familiarity in his heart and even had a faint feeling of expectation. It was not until he went to the target planet that Sherlock remembered why he was so familiar. My goodness, isn't this the plot of The Little Beginner, The Legend of the Passionate Eyes, that Sherlock watched in his previous life? Thinking about it carefully, her mother's wooden people are indeed 90% similar to the Otsutsuki clan in the animation. Damn. Could it be that the place where the mission is going this time is the planet where the Eye Legend is? The planet where the Eye Legend is actually in the universe of the Marvel world? Doesn't that mean that I can see that road more? What did I do in my shadow? Ape, you regret it. Such a classic scene. Maybe if you are lucky, you can see the cute, weak, helpless but edible Hinata-chan that you loved the most in your previous life. Facts have proved that Sherlock's imagination is very beautiful, but the facts are often cruel. When they arrived at the target planet, this group of natives did spit fire, water, and even wind as soon as they made a hand seal, but it had nothing to do with the Eye Legend. According to the scans of the two battle armors, the reason why this group of natives can spit fire and water is that, although their bodies look similar to humans, there are 3 energy storage none above the heart. The energy of 3 element is stored inside, and according to the size of each energy nun, each person is good at different skills. As for the hand seal, in Tony's words, it is pure self-hypnosis. According to their body structure, they don't need to make a seal at all. They should stand there, pinch their waists with both hands, and spray whatever they want. The reason why there is a step of making a seal is purely because there is a need for such a way to pass on various skills and conduct a certain amount of self-hypnosis. Sherlock couldn't accept this result. He originally wanted to feel the charm of the Eye Legend, but now, not to mention that Sherlock's favorite lightning release didn't exist at all. Even the seals were fake. Sherlock, who couldn't stand it, immediately stood up and showed this group of natives what lightning release Chidori was with the function of the armor. In fact, the modified armor can hold plasma in its hand, and the high temperature of the plasma can barely replicate the penetration of Chidori. He also used the power of the reality gem to show this group of natives what Earth release was. At that time, Sherlock stunned this group of natives. They had never seen what Sherlock performed before, and they were directly shocked. Sherlock didn't waste time. After stunning this group of natives, Sherlock immediately took out the chakra system in the Eye legend and began to fool this group of natives. Where had this group of natives seen such a generous person as Sherlock? They immediately put down their guard and began to learn the chakra theory from the Eye legend from Sherlock. The two groups of people were one group that dared to speak and the other group that dared to believe, and they were inexplicably harmonious. Even when Tony finished his work alone and came to Sherlock to leave, the natives looked reluctant to leave, as if they were very grateful for the knowledge Sherlock had taught them. Sherlock didn't know that long after he left, the natives had mutated individuals born from years of self-hypnosis and changes in the environment, and some of them actually mutated into Energy Non with thunder attributes, and then Energy Non with earth attributes. With the help of unintentional natural selection, the natives really learned the 5 escape techniques as Sherlock thought, and even developed to the point that they could synthesize the so-called bloodline limit according to the chakra usage instructions left by Sherlock. And Sherlock, the fierce man who fell from the sky, was regarded as a myth by the natives who appeared later, and was honored as a fairy. As for the name, well, compared with the 6 Paths sage in the Legend of the Eye, Sherlock is a little less B-rated. Sherlock is called the Chakra Sage, and is considered the founder of the chakra theory in later generations. What? Didn't you doubt that the group of people who held Sherlock's chakra instructions couldn't practice lightning and earth escape? It's amazing to say, God knows how stubborn these natives can be. Is that called practicing without ability? That's pure lack of talent. If it doesn't work, change people quickly. Don't hold on to the secret book. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 378, Mickey's house in seconds or not? As for what our chakra sage is doing now, well, after dealing with the wooden people, Sherlock and Tony unanimously decided to make a small change to their spaceship. The reason for this decision is actually very simple, because although the life of the two is very exciting, they always feel a little dry for some reason. That's right, it's a little dry. As for what to do about the dryness, in Sherlock's previous life, a master named Meng told Sherlock the solution. It doesn't matter if it's dry or sloppy, just have a discussion. After all, the two of them are like-minded people. The guy feels uncomfortable if he doesn't do something cheap for a day. Although being chased on a daily basis is also very exciting, it's still a bit boring after a long time. So the two of them decided to add a layer of projection on the outside of the spaceship. As for the content of the projection, well, what do you think the two bitches will do? That's right. Anyway, Disney, the player with the strongest legal department on the earth, has not carried out space business, so the two of them simply put the image of Mickey Mouse on the projection. To be honest, Tony didn't agree with Sherlock's proposal at first. After all, as a native of Earth, the image of Mickey Mouse was a bit childish for Tony. But it was this childish image that suddenly became mean after being matched with the dubbing found by Sherlock, and even made people have the urge to hit people. After the spaceship was transformed, when facing the pursuit of those forces, or 3D projected, mean Mickey Mouse would appear on the top of Sherlock's spaceship and use full band broadcasting to shout at the enemies behind him. Hey, what are you looking at? It's me, your dad. Do you want to enter your dad's Miomio house? What? Want to come in? Come and chase me. Come, read some little dirty words to me, and you can come in. Miska, Muska, you can't ride on it even to make it more vivid. The moment this mean Mickey Mouse appeared, the projection would project the 3 big words Miomio house on Sherlock's spaceship in the universal language of the universe. This is not the meanest thing. The meanest thing is that, if this group of people really catch up with Sherlock and his spaceship, the wonderful house on the spaceship will become the unwonderful house in an instant. Mickey Mouse's shouting also became Hey, do you really want to enter your father's wonderful house? Do you want to wrestle with your father? Come on, try to come in and wrestle, you little rubbish. Anyway, it was just a bunch of dirty words output, which made the group of pursuers angry. If you can't catch up, you will be angry to death. If you catch up and start fighting, you have to fight and endure the dirty words of the opponent. Anyway, it's uncomfortable to death. Of course, when the enemy is uncomfortable, Sherlock and Tony will be very excited, and the two will become more arrogant. The more arrogant the group of pursuers are, the angrier they are, and the angrier they are, the more wanted they will be. The greater the wanted, the more famous they will be, and the more famous they will be, the greater the benefits they will get. Of course, being famous is not a good thing. There are always people who want to run in front of them and try to become famous in one battle. Although Tony, who was so ignorant of the world, could handle it by himself, the two of them got a little annoyed after a long time. In the end, they decided to retire and return home after one more big wave. The final task they chose was a task issued by a collector. The task was to go to the holy land of a cosmic race and take back their so-called holy object, which looked like a ball. It was a bit similar to the task of the Pictou clan at the beginning, but the difference was that this time the task was an anonymous task. That is, the publisher of the task did not care who took the task and how many people took the task. The owner of the task only cared whether the thing could be obtained. Whoever brought the thing to him would be paid. For Sherlock and Tony, it was actually the same, whether there was this task or not. The two of them took on this task with the idea of making a fortune. What Sherlock didn't expect was that when the two carefully sneaked into this so-called Holy Land, Sherlock saw a person who he could never have thought of. That's right, it's the Star-Lord, who looks very handsome with BGM, but looks silly without it. Sherlock finally remembered why this mission always gave him a familiar feeling. Isn't this the mission to seize the power gem at the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy? Just when Tony wanted to rush out from his hiding place and give this fool a punch like War Machine, Sherlock grabbed Tony, who was about to take action. Looking at Tony with a face full of question marks, Sherlock's expression was extremely serious. Listen to me, Tony, let's give up this mission. Just buy some souvenirs as planned and go home directly, and don't do this mission. Tony could be full of question marks about Sherlock's statement. After all, the person opposite, who was singing old songs from the last century with a tone-deaf voice and dancing awkwardly, didn't look like someone Sherlock could be afraid of. Seeing Tony look at the dancing Star-Lord with a tangled face and then turned around to look at himself, Sherlock also knew that Tony was a little unwilling to give up this lucrative mission. After thinking for a while, Sherlock said to Tony seriously, "I'm serious, don't mess with this guy. Not because of how powerful this idiot is, nor how awesome his background is, but getting too close to this guy will affect your IQ. Are you kidding? After all, this guy looks just like those idiots on Earth." Tony's first reaction to Sherlock's statement was to not believe it, but Sherlock soon shattered Tony's last hope and continued with a serious face. "No, I swear, it really affects your IQ. You know, I will predict that he will definitely affect your IQ. I said so after seeing what his future teammates will look like." Hearing Sherlock's serious words, Tony's face changed involuntarily. After looking at Star-Lord, who was still dancing awkwardly with fear, Tony pulled Sherlock away without hesitation. "Just kidding. I wish you a happy life. The smartest person on Earth, one of the few people in the universe cursed by knowledge, Tony's most precious thing, besides Pepper, is his extraordinary IQ. If you want to make contact with Tony, you can go for his fame, his money, or even if you have a good relationship with him, you can just go for his armor, but you can't go for Pepper Potts and his IQ." Chapter 379, a super drama shopping trip. Tony, who was afraid of affecting his IQ, left here quietly with Sherlock without saying anything, just like when he came here and planned to buy some things and then go back to Earth. After all, the two of them ran out to let themselves go and only informed their families and did not even discuss it with their families. It is conceivable what they will face if they go back. After all, the look of Pepper when she gets angry is very scary. Anyone who sees it knows it. Otherwise, why do you think her nickname is Pepper? The planet they chose is a place called Chadaxing. It is the largest free trade zone in the vicinity, and one of the best shopping and entertainment planets in the universe. The two plan to buy some souvenirs and go back. After all, the apology gifts have been purchased on the female paradise planet without men. It can be said that there is the top and most complete place for female products in the universe. The main purpose of coming to Chadaxing this time is to buy some souvenirs and some electronic products to take back. At least, Pepper can't know what the two did in the universe. Sherlock even dared to swear that if Pepper knew that he and Tony were notorious in the universe, Tony would definitely lose a layer of skin, even if he was not dead. Of course, according to the two people's behavior of using the blacklist as a daily check-in, even if Chadastar is a very open and peaceful free trade and entertainment planet, the dark elf vests of the two people will be arrested on the spot as soon as they appear. So this time, the two of them unanimously plan to travel with their original appearance. In the nearby asteroid belt, the two restored their original appearance, then put on their armor, and flew out of the spaceship. Sherlock then shrunk the spaceship and stuffed it into his library. After all, the spaceship of the two people is also a business card. God knows if the two people will be shot down directly if they appear at the entrance of Chadastar in this spaceship. After the two people entered the planet in the normal way wearing armor, they were relieved. Although the armor on the two people was repeatedly looked at by the staff entering the customs, to be honest, such armor is not a rare thing in the universe. So they let the two pass as fans of the infamous destroyer of the universe. The two turned into good kids and immediately took off their armor for surviving in the vacuum environment of the universe in the disinfection room according to the laws of Chadastar, and put them in Sherlock's library. They put on their regular clothes and began to really step into this famous planet that integrates shopping and entertainment. When the two walked out of the space elevator and stepped on the land of Chadastar, they both breathed a sigh of relief and reluctantly put their minds at ease. How should I put it? The days of lawlessness have been too long, and it is still a little uncomfortable to start abiding by the law. Of course, it is uncomfortable, but you still have to buy things. Anyway, the two have a lot of money, so they just let go and started buying all kinds of strange and weird things they have never seen before. In addition to electronic products and souvenirs, Tony's main target is those good-looking ornaments with some basic functions. This thing is Pepper's favorite. If you can rely on the cosmetics, clothes, bags and jewelry bought from the women's paradise to avoid death penalty, then the remaining living penalty depends on whether the small ornaments bought on Chadaxing this time are good enough to please Little Pepper and exempt Little Pepper from living penalty. As for Sherlock, Sherlock didn't have so many ideas. After all, his 5 uncles were almost used to his behavior of going out for a walk from time to time. Moreover, men are always easier to coax than women. Compared with the angry Little Pepper, who is harder to press than the pigs during the Chinese New Year, Sherlock's 5 uncles can only surround Sherlock and kick him in a circle. Of course, if you bring their favorite gifts, this kicking can be exempted, and Sherlock can prepare the gifts of these gentlemen without even coming to Chadaxing. It's nothing more than strong liquor and weapons. When he was on the black market, Sherlock bought several kinds of energy weapons and a large box of alien wine early, which would definitely make his 5 uncles smile. In order to ensure that everything is foolproof, Sherlock bought 5 complete sets of women's cosmetics, clothes, bags and other things when he was putting on makeup and sneaking into the female paradise planet. He would give them to the 5 straight men at that time and let them please the black widows who were flirting with them. In this way, Sherlock dared to ensure that he was absolutely foolproof. What really gave Sherlock a headache was the Talalita in his family. If he couldn't buy something to make the Talalita happy, then Sherlock's life would be really hard. Of course, Sherlock's luck was not bad. In a store, Sherlock actually bought 2 little ducks that were only as tall as basketballs, and Sherlock believed that these 2 little ducks would definitely please the 2 little Lalita. The reason is very simple, because these 2 little ducks look very much like Donald Duck and Daisy in Disney. Especially after Sherlock changed the clothes of these 2 little things with high IQ, they looked even more like them, and even their calls were the broken voice of Donald Duck, which was magical. Of course, Tony was stunned and even doubted if this thing would be targeted by Disney's legal department if it really appeared on Earth. It was because Sherlock still had a library and the ability to exchange nude suitcases infinitely. Otherwise the two of them would have enough money to take all these things back with them, as if they were buying goods. The two entered the Cheddar planet empty-handed, and then they were still empty-handed, but Sherlock's library had 6 more boxes. Tony kept rehearsing how to say it after returning to make Pepper not so angry, and Sherlock rolled his eyes all the way. Just as the two of them walked towards the space elevator with a reckless pace, Sherlock suddenly felt something hit his back heavily. Because of inertia, Sherlock didn't even have time to react and was pushed forward by the huge force on his back. As we all know, when people are panicking, especially when they suddenly lose their balance, they always subconsciously want to grab something to prevent themselves from falling too hard. Naturally, Sherlock was no exception. Caught off guard, Sherlock waved his hands randomly in the air. Not to mention, he actually grabbed something, but Sherlock was not sure what it was. Before Sherlock fell to the ground and threw the heavy object behind him, a teasing voice came from behind Sherlock. "Good taste, brother." Following the content of the voice, Sherlock subconsciously looked up and saw a pair of pink men's underwear with the captain's shield pattern printed on it, and Tony, who was trembling slightly because of the sudden brain crash. Well, at this moment, he also knew what the hell he had grabbed in his panic: Tony's pants. Chapter 380, An Unexpected Way of Imprisonment. Question: what happens when a person is too ashamed and socially dead? Answer: he will be furious and will try every means to drag the culprit who caused his social death to find a way to live in another universe. Yes, Sherlock feels this way now. The cause of the incident is very simple. Star-Lord, the idiot, also came to Cheddar Star to hand in a task and then met Gamora. The two wrestled together, and then Rocket and Groot also wanted to get a piece of the pie and wanted to snatch the power gem from Star-Lord. In the end, under the entanglement of the poet, Rocket was thrown away without paying attention and hit Sherlock's back, causing Sherlock to lose his balance. With his hands grabbing, he directly tore off Tony's pants in public. Well, in fact, even Sherlock himself didn't expect Tony to wear such underwear. The pink color shows Tony's girlish heart. The most important thing is that Tony said something like he hated the captain, but he printed the captain's logo on his underwear. It can only be said that someone in the previous life was definitely not groundless to ship the CP of Captain and Tony. Of course, compared to Sherlock's worry, Tony was much more at a loss, especially after hearing Rocket's good taste teasing. Tony only felt a crisp ding in his head. This is not a system starting up, but the sound of the string called reason breaking. Tony, with a dark face, pulled up his pants in an instant at a speed that was almost as fast as the Flash, and then wiped his hands on his wrists, and the two hand armors belonging to the Iron Man armor covered Tony's wrists in an instant. Similarly, the jet boots of the Iron Man armor quickly appeared on Tony's feet, and then accompanied by a burst of energy storage sound, Tony's face began to become ferocious. "You all have to die today." That's right, under the addition of shame and social death, Tony successfully lost his IQ and joined the big melee of the Guardians of the Galaxy prototype team in front of him. Sherlock, who got up from the ground, turned around and saw Star-Lord, Gamora, Rocket, and Groot, and Tony, who was black-faced and constantly firing hand cannons, sighed helplessly. "Look, I told you to stay away from these people. It really affects your IQ." After complaining helplessly, Sherlock could only shout, "Stop fighting," while taking out a stun gun from the library and joining the battle, trying to mediate the fight between the two. As for the result, haha, why don't you take a look at the handcuffs on Sherlock's hands and the shackles on his feet? God knows why the lawless planet destroyer in the universe who even dares to make active ridicules would go to jail for fighting on an irrelevant shopping planet. This is so magical. Although Tony and Sherlock tried their best to defend themselves as victims in front of the judge, it was useless. The two were sent to jail like the members of the Guardians of the Galaxy. The only thing to be happy about is that the two people's vests were well covered, and no one knew who the two people's vests were. Otherwise, the two might not be imprisoned, but directly shot on the spot for 5 minutes. Hey, Tony, smile. At least this is a novel experience, isn't it? Sherlock, who was standing at the end of the team, smiled and comforted Tony, who was walking in front of him with a dark face. Tony said that he really didn't want to bother with Sherlock. Even Rocket, who was in front of Tony, couldn't help rolling his eyes after hearing Sherlock's words. But it's really not Sherlock's fault. After all, Sherlock was really in prison for the first time in his 2 lives. You know what? It was really novel. Of course, after all, it was imprisonment, and the equipment of several people was taken away by the prison guards, except Sherlock. After all, Sherlock's good things were all stored in his own library. For this time in prison, Sherlock regarded it as an experience of life. But the facts proved that Sherlock thought too much. Well, how to say it, everyone should know what kind of stinky morality the prison on the Eagle Source side is. That's right, the Guardians of the Galaxy, Sherlock, and Tony had just been imprisoned when a big guy wanted to make a move on Star-Lord. Fortunately, although Rocket looked like a crispy face, he was a very righteous person. Under the threat of Groot's nucleic acid test, he said directly that these people were under his protection. Tony's face looked a little better, of course, not much better. After seeing that this group of people were not easy to mess with, the other prisoners no longer had any idea of bullying the newcomers. Sherlock and Tony were also happy and relaxed. The 2 of them found a wider cell and prepared to go in to discuss how to escape. What the 2 did not expect was that when they sat down and were about to speak, Rocket followed. Seeing that the 2 sat down, Rocket said something that was extremely treasonous in prison. I say, guys, I'm sorry to have caused you trouble. Don't worry, I will take you out. This small prison is not a big deal for Rocket. It won't be long before I can take you out. Sherlock and Tony didn't take Rocket's words to heart, but the fact that Rocket came to apologize made Tony look much better. It's okay. Sherlock and I would have escaped, even if you didn't tell us. It would have been better if Tony didn't tell us. Rocket looked at Tony more after hearing this. He stretched out his little paw towards Tony, as if he was a fellow traveler. Rocket, what's your name, little brother with good taste? Tony, who had a good face, turned pale again after hearing the crisp noodles address him, but still shook hands with Rocket. Tony Stark. This is my nephew Sherlock. Sherlock instinctively rubbed Rocket's head, which successfully made Rocket's hair explode. However, Sherlock said to Rocket, as if he didn't care, "Hello, Mr. Crispy Noodles." Rocket, who was still angry, was stunned for a moment after hearing Sherlock's address to him, and seemed a little confused. What instant noodles? What the hell are instant noodles? My name is Huo. Before Rocket finished speaking, Sherlock waved his hands like a magic trick and 2 bags of little raccoon instant noodles appeared in his hands. These were the snacks Sherlock bought during the last rabbit trip. He simply ignored Rocket's shouting and skillfully opened the bag and stuffed it into Rocket's hand. Hey, you know what? For Rocket, the taste of the instant noodles really attracted Rocket's attention. And Sherlock also smiled and pointed at the 3 words little raccoon on the package and said to Rocket, "Look at little raccoon instant noodles, isn't this you?" Rocket refuted Sherlock's slander while chewing the instant noodles handed to him by Sherlock with fascination. "Stop talking nonsense. You, Rocket, have nothing to do with the fat looking thing on the bag." "Well, but for the sake of what is this thing called?" "Oh, for the sake of instant noodles, pretty boy, I, Rocket, will take care of your safety." "Thank you." Sherlock smiled and ate the instant noodles. Before he finished saying thank you, he was interrupted rudely. Well, look what I found." Bringing in contraband casually and still planning to escape from prison. "Pretty boy, as long as you accompany me." The speaker was a guy who looked like a gorilla lying on the upper bunk. This guy should be sleeping here and was woken up by a few people and then overheard their conversation and wanted to get up and threaten them. But before he could finish his words, Sherlock didn't even turn his head and pointed his right hand over his shoulder. A red light as thick as an arm shot out from Sherlock's finger. The gorilla didn't even have time to finish his words before Sherlock's spell knocked him against the wall and he passed out. Chapter 381 8 AM to 5 PM weekends. Food and accommodation included. After seeing Sherlock's move, Rocket was stunned as expected. He even stopped eating the instant noodles in his hand and just looked at Sherlock stupidly. Sherlock was also polite. He rubbed Rocket's furry head several times, while Rocket didn't react. Of course, Rocket finally reacted and said to Sherlock in a stupid tone, "I say, brother, how much money do you need to buy your hand that can only emit light?" After hearing Rocket's words, Sherlock seemed to have completed a ritual with a satisfied look on his face. After all, this move just now has upgraded Sherlock from a little white face to a brother. What else can he ask for? Today, Sherlock has also experienced the treatment of a brother. Of course, Sherlock is not going to show any special skills of chopping hands, but just said to Rocket with a smile, "No, I won't buy it, no matter how much money it is." After hearing Sherlock's answer, Rocket rolled his eyes in annoyance. Even if Rocket is stupid, he knows that Sherlock is teasing him. Just listen to Sherlock's dashed tone. After staring at Sherlock for a while with an expression of subway, old man, and mobile phone, Rocket suddenly jumped down from the stool in the room and took away the instant noodles Sherlock had placed on the table. He left a sentence, "If you need anything, come to me," and then left in a graceful manner, which was completely in line with Zuzumo's image of waving his sleeves and not taking away a cloud. It was not until Rocket left the cell that Sherlock put away the perverted expression on his face when he saw a cute little animal and used magic to throw the unconscious gorilla on the bed out. By the way, he also used a magic to clean up the bed and then lay down happily on Tony's upper bunk. Seeing Sherlock's eager look, Tony seemed a little anxious. After thinking for a while, he said to Sherlock, "Sherlock, Tony was interrupted by Sherlock before he finished speaking. "Tony, take a few days off and take it as a vacation. Also, believe me, if you don't want to lose your IQ, don't get in touch with that group of people." Of course, Rocket and the tree man can have a little contact. After hearing Sherlock's words, Tony also gave up the idea of going out to see what was going on with that group of people. After all, Sherlock said that he would predict this matter, and all the predictions Sherlock had made were correct. Tony believed it. Of course, it's one thing to believe, but you can't be soft-hearted and refute it immediately. "No, I want to say, give me one of your bed cleaning magic. I really can't lie down with this thing." Sherlock just rolled his eyes helplessly, but it satisfied Tony's little wish. After all, it's just a matter of turning over, isn't it? As for why Sherlock is so wary of the Guardians of the Galaxy, there are actually reasons. If it were in the past, Sherlock, as a fun person, really wanted to get in touch with this group of funny people. But now, Sherlock is holding the reality stone in his hand, and there is still the breath of death on his body. This is why he should be thankful that this is the universe of the movie. If it were in the comic universe, Sherlock and Thanos would have a complete vendetta against each other for stealing his wife and cutting off his wealth. Moreover, the guy named Ronan, that the Guardians of the Galaxy will face recently, is a serious person on Thanos' side, and Sherlock doesn't want to have any contact with a jerk like Thanos so early. Sherlock still has a plan in mind to maintain his intelligence advantage. Of course, there is another reason, that is, Sherlock does dislike those guys who can't even average out a brain. It's thanks to Rocket's high IQ that the average can be a positive number. If there is no Rocket, then everyone would really be a player who lacks brains. And Sherlock really doesn't want to defeat the enemy by dancing awkwardly. Damn it, what's the difference between such behavior and broadcasting your shit live to the whole universe? Sherlock said that he absolutely doesn't want to do this. It doesn't matter if they are smart or not, and it doesn't matter if they are smart or not. The main reason is that it is too embarrassing for Sherlock to bear it. After the two decided on the next course of action, they were completely free and lived the wonderful life that workers dream of. From 8 AM to 5 PM, with weekends off, food, accommodation, and clothing provided, and a fucking regular job. Which worker's life can compare to this? Of course, although the two were lazy, they were not idle players. Tony was idle anyway, so he began to observe Star-Lord and others, who Sherlock said should not be contacted too much. But as Tony observed, Tony found that Sherlock was not wrong at all. A guy who called himself Star-Lord looked like an earthling, a lady with forgiveness all over her body, and a guy with red lines all over his body really affected his IQ, as Sherlock said. Tony almost watched Gamora, who was originally quite smart, slowly being assimilated by Star-Lord, and then, as if he suddenly thought of it, he threw his brain away and mixed with Star-Lord from time to time. Of course, even though he disliked them, Tony was very welcoming to Rocket and the tree man Groot. After all, Tony could really talk to Rocket, and they were both engineers. Rocket seemed to have discovered this, and he always liked to take Groot to Tony's cell to discuss some technical things with him. The two of them had countless wonderful ideas. Tony was like an engineer who could create something out of thin air, while Rocket was a garbage man who was extremely good at optimization. The two of them were extremely complementary, and their compatibility even surprised them. It was definitely not for the unique instant noodles in Sherlock's hand. Absolutely not. It was for technology. As for Groot, well, Groot also liked to follow Rocket to find Tony and Sherlock, although when they first met, Tony didn't know that Groot could only say "I'm Groot," which was a big joke. Of course, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that when Sherlock met Groot through Rocket, Sherlock gave Groot a big bag of dragon dung mixed with golden dung. You have to know that Jinkalar is the top fertilizer in the Muggle world, and dragon dung is also the top fertilizer in the magic world. When the two are added together, for Groot, a Tremania, this thing is a super delicacy comparable to a full-scale banquet. Even later, every time Sherlock came, he would prepare such fertilizer for Groot, and Groot's relationship with Sherlock became better and better. Every time he came, he would produce a small flower for Sherlock. In the end, it reached the point where Rocket was a little jealous, but seeing that Groot had become visibly thicker with Sherlock's fertilizer, Rocket just let it go. Chapter 382, Escape and Farewell. Of course, the two of them were interrupted before they had such a pleasant life for a long time. The reason was very simple, because the Guardians of the Galaxy started their own escape plan. As Rocket and Groot's friend, and the final victim of their group fight, they would not leave Sherlock and Tony alone. However, if you want Sherlock to evaluate the escape plan of several people, Sherlock can only say that they are worthy of being the Guardians of the Galaxy and they performed very normally. Then can it be called a prison break? That is a pure emergency response to an emergency situation. It is a classic case of just do it. And the most important thing is that no one knows who designed this prison. It can be said that where there is a dragon, there must be a phoenix. There really is a smart person who adopted the suggestion of the dragon. How can you embed such a big energy battery in the wall? What's the matter? Just want to challenge the height of the species in the universe. And, Rocket, are you really so fascinated by such mechanical limbs? He even asked Star-Lord to go and get the artificial leg of a disabled person. Sherlock was speechless. What made Sherlock even more speechless was Star-Lord. This guy turned the door and ran back to beat up a prison guard who had surrendered and took back his Walkman. In short, there were too many things to complain about, and they were too dense. Sherlock even wanted to complain, but he felt tired just thinking about it. But all in all, the few of them escaped very smoothly. Of course, the process of escaping was full of surprises. God knows why Rocket could make the prison escape pod feel like a roller coaster. Anyway, Sherlock's face had become extremely pale when he arrived at Star-Lord's spaceship, and he swore that he would never ride any means of transportation driven by Rocket in the future. Sherlock felt that no one else could make things in the universe feel like the night bus in Harry Potter. Of course, after arriving at Star-Lord's spaceship, Sherlock and Tony had no intention of continuing to tangle with Star-Lord and his group of funny people. After Star-Lord drove the spaceship and completely got rid of the pursuers, Sherlock and Tony almost immediately proposed the idea of farewell. When the Guardians of the Galaxy focused their attention on Sherlock and Tony, they had already changed into Tony's armor. After all, Star-Lord's spaceship was not too big and there were only so many seats. If it weren't for the armor on their bodies that could absorb the floor of the spaceship, it would be lucky for Sherlock and Tony not to bleed. Out of guilt for Sherlock and Tony being involved in trouble by their group, Star-Lord and Rocket naturally proposed the idea of sending the two back to Cheddar Star, but they were immediately rejected by the two. In the end, they could only find an asteroid belt to put the two down. Then the Guardians of the Galaxy in the spaceship felt that their three views had been really impacted. After Sherlock and Tony left the warehouse, they flew to a place far enough away from the Guardians of the Galaxy spaceship with the power of the armor. Sherlock flipped his wrist and a spaceship the size of a basketball appeared in Sherlock's hand. Before the Guardians of the Galaxy could figure out what Sherlock meant by taking out a model in such a remote place, the next second, the spaceship that was originally only the size of a model turned into a real spaceship several times the size of his own spaceship. What shocked the Guardians of the Galaxy was that not long after Sherlock and Tony entered the spaceship started up, and then everyone watched eagerly as a mouse appeared on Sherlock and Tony's spaceship that looked cute, but for some reason always gave people a sense of meanness. Moreover, a line of "Mio Mio House" appeared on the hull of the spaceship, and there was even a huge arrow above the words, as if it was afraid that others would not be able to find this line of big words. Then this mean mouse waved to the confused people, and then suddenly entered the space jump, and disappeared without a trace. At this time, even if the Guardians of the Galaxy were stupid, they knew that something was not right. As a mercenary, Star-Lord recognized who this arrogant spaceship belonged to at a glance. Well, Rocket, if I'm not mistaken, this spaceship should, maybe, probably, possibly be the spaceship of the so-called planet destroyer that has been in the limelight recently? Star-Lord asked a little stupidly, but before Rocket could answer Star-Lord, Gamora, who was sitting behind Star-Lord, couldn't help but frown and denied Star-Lord's idea. No, I heard that the so-called planet destroyer is to Dark Elves. Thanos also wants to recruit these two lawless Dark Elves into his subordinates. These two people are definitely not the planet destroyers. Rocket rolled his eyes speechlessly at the bickering between the two and then spoke. Come on, stop thinking about it. It doesn't matter if he is a planet destroyer or a creator. I just know that these two people are very suitable for me. They are my friends. That's all. I'm Groot. Me too. Tree Groot also said something along with Rocket, but unfortunately, except for Rocket, the other three people probably didn't understand what Groot meant. The only one who was not in the right situation among the five was Drax the Destroyer. Sherlock and Tony were lawless in the universe. When they were doing their daily business, poor Drax was serving his sentence in prison. He had no idea that Sherlock and Tony had earned a reputation that was enough to stop a baby from crying in the past month. He looked at the four teammates sitting in front of him with a silly face and said slowly, "Well, what are you talking about? Is it time to eat? To be honest, I'm a little hungry." Drax's words successfully made the three people in front roll their eyes in unison. As for why there were three people, it was because Groot would not roll his eyes. Almost immediately, several people gave up discussing whether Sherlock and Tony were the so-called planet destroyers and turned their attention to another matter. "Let's go, I'll take you to find my buyer," Gamora said to Star-Lord and Rocket. After hearing Gamora's words and thinking about the long string of zeros after 4 billion, Star-Lord did not hesitate at all. He stepped on the accelerator and flew towards the coordinates given by Gamora. Chapter 383 Return Home. Sherlock didn't know what was going on with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and he didn't want to know. But there was one thing Sherlock was sure of, that was Tony was extremely eager to return to Earth. And what should Sherlock do in the face of Tony's eagerness? It was very simple. Just sit in your seat honestly, then put on a mechanized and very programmed smile on your face. Then honestly look at the screen that was constantly warning you, and listen to the solos of Jarvis and Tony in the cockpit. Jarvis kept warning Tony that the spaceship was on the verge of overload, but Tony insisted that he built the spaceship himself, and he knew exactly where the limit of this spaceship was. God knows why Tony can drive a spaceship in the vast universe like a German highway. Anyway, Sherlock felt that way, and he didn't know how the engine of this spaceship could withstand Tony's space jumps again and again. Of course, no matter how anxious Tony was, he was still conscious. Tony is not a fool. With all the things he and Sherlock have done in the past month, which would make Zangson shake his head, his spaceship has probably been famous among the major forces in the universe. So although Tony was anxious, his first step was to rush to the motherly planet of the Dark Elves on the star map. After landing, Sherlock was a little curious about what Spicy Chicken's hometown looked like, but unfortunately, it looked like a desolate place. There was nothing else except the land. It looked like, well, how should I put it, the feeling of Mars with a filter? In addition to the grey-black land on the whole Earth, the sky did not have the bright and clear feeling on the Earth. It was dark and made people feel depressed. Sherlock was not bragging at all. Only the Dark Elves could tolerate such an environment. If it were an Earthling, this place would be a place of depression. In this environment, even the most extroverted person would be depressed for at most a month. Of course, Sherlock was observing everywhere, as if he was traveling around, while Tony on the other side was very busy. As soon as he landed, Tony jumped off his captain's throne and ran to the control console in 2 steps. After operating on the screen in front of him, a palm-sized thing popped up next to the screen, which looked like a solid-state hard drive. Tony pulled out the thing that popped out from the side of the screen without hesitation and threw it into the trash can for destruction. Then he took out a new one from his trouser pocket and inserted it. After that, he rushed out with a group of steel construction teams. Tony's operation confused Sherlock. Sherlock, who knew nothing about such high tech, didn't understand what Tony was busy with at all. He could only stand in the cab and wait for Tony to finish his work. Fortunately, there was also the considerate Jarvis to chat with, and through Jarvis, Sherlock also understood what Tony was doing. The first is the solid-state drive-like thing. To put it simply, it is a small thing that combines star maps and friend or foe identification. It can not only show the location of the spacecraft, mark the mother star, but also draw a star map of the universe with the mother star as the center. Tony took out the star map that originally belonged to the Dark Elves and destroyed it. This time, he replaced it with a black market version of the star map that Tony bought without any force marking. As for why Tony rushed out with the steel construction team, the reason is actually very simple. Tony needs to change the 3D projection function on the spacecraft back. The original function of this thing is actually just to simulate the surrounding environment so that the spacecraft can achieve the purpose of visual invisibility. Generally speaking, it is used to hide the spacecraft. For example, the way Sherlock and Tony used it to tease the pursuers when they were hanging out is definitely a cult practice. Tony needs to change this function back to normal so that it is convenient to return to Earth. After all, there is Disney on Earth. If he really goes against that mean Mickey Mouse and the wonderful house on the spaceship, even aliens will be sued by Disney's legal department until they lose all their pants. After all, Tony is an extremely good engineer and has been studying in the universe for more than a month. For Tony, changing a projection is basically nothing. In less than 10 minutes, Tony came back with the iron armor he just took out. This time, Tony couldn't hide the smile on his face. The corner of his mouth was even harder to suppress than ache. He didn't care whether Sherlock was sitting well or not and directly started the spaceship. In order to return to Earth quickly, Tony didn't even leave the atmosphere of the Dark Elves' home planet and directly launched a space jump. In this regard, Sherlock expressed endless condemnation. It turns out that there is no way to deal with it, no matter how anxious they are. Although the distance between the Dark Elves' planet and the Earth in the universe is not very far, with the help of space jumps, it took the two of them 24 hours to return to the vicinity of the Earth. The time when the two returned to the Earth was just at noon. The entire training ground was resting. Sherlock looked at his own training ground in midair and was a little emotional for a while. There was a feeling that things had changed. When the two people's spaceship landed on the runway, it actually did not attract anyone's attention. After all, it was the anti-gravity technology and 3D stereo projection technology here. It can be said to be silent without starting the acceleration engine. The real reason why everyone in the training ground reacted to Tony and Sherlock's return was actually the huge movement when the hangar door of the training ground was opened. When the spaceship stopped, Sherlock's 5 uncles, Pepper and Tulali, were already standing next to the hangar. Even Sherlock's 5 uncles and the Tulali were holding weapons in their hands. The guns were pointed at the spaceship. After all, the two left without alerting anyone. After more than a month in the universe, who knows whether the people coming down from the spaceship are their own people or some strange creatures. After all, many science fiction movies have talked about aliens who parasitize and take away the host's memory and then come to Earth to do evil. As the hatch slowly opened, Sherlock and Tony appeared in front of everyone with 4 suitcases and a smile on their faces. Chapter 384, a different reception than expected. The people who were originally quite vigilant put down their weapons in unison after seeing the two people's faces with a bit of fear in their faces. It was confirmed that it was definitely the real one. Apart from the real one, no other alien could imitate the same kind of sleazy temperament that the two people had. According to Sherlock and Tony's idea, the people who had not seen each other for a long time must hold a welcome reception for the two people, and then at the reception, the two people will distribute the souvenirs they brought back from outer space to everyone. But the fact is that ideals are often beautiful, but reality is cruel. After confirming that the two were the real ones, Pepper, who was standing behind the crowd, burst into a sharp explosion, and then rushed towards Tony, who was walking in front of her, while sending telegrams and clapping. Swear words were blocked. Tony, how dare you? And %hash at ash percent, and %hash at. Do you know, and asterisk, and %. Looking at Pepper, who seemed to have fallen into a rage, Tony's originally mean smile froze on his face, and in an instant, his smile turned into fear. Fear wanted Tony to escape instinctively, but reason told Tony that, if you dare to escape, you are basically useless. In the end, reason defeated fear, and Tony could only put on a cautious smile and prepare to welcome Pepper's little punch on him. But what Tony didn't expect was that Pepper didn't punch him immediately after rushing up, but gave Tony a big hug. This made Tony stand still completely, and just when Tony wanted to put down the box in his hand and give Pepper a big hug, Pepper suddenly retreated from Tony's arms. The expression on her face changed from the joy of meeting at the beginning to the anger of a tigress in a second. She went up and grabbed Tony's ear directly and pulled Tony's ear out of the hangar with a dark face and said nothing. Sherlock, who witnessed the whole process, felt like he was riding a bungee jump. After seeing Tony being taken away by Pepper, he breathed a sigh of relief. How did that sentence go? You are not allowed to beat me again after you beat Tony. Sherlock silently drew a cross for Tony in his heart. Looking at Pepper's appearance, Sherlock knew that Tony would never be so easy to coax Pepper this time. I hope that the gifts Tony brought back can satisfy Pepper, otherwise the consequences, well, Sherlock is covered with goosebumps just thinking about it. Of course, although Sherlock escaped Pepper's poisonous hands, he turned around and saw his 5 uncles looking at him with a sneer, and the two lolly pulled the bolt fiercely under Sherlock's gaze. Sherlock, who was originally relieved, suddenly lifted his heart again. Fortunately, Sherlock often does such things, and his 5 uncles and two lollies are almost used to it. Moreover, for Sherlock, the people on his side are undoubtedly much easier to please than Pepper. Especially when Sherlock took out a variety of alien weapons from the box. The sneers on the faces of Sherlock's 5 uncles suddenly turned into surprise. No man can resist the charm of guns, let alone alien guns, that have never been seen before. And when Sherlock took out the alien wine gift package that he had prepared long ago, Sherlock's 5 uncles no longer had any complaints about Sherlock disappearing without a trace after just sending a text message. The female product gift package that followed made Sherlock's 5 uncles blush, and they didn't care about whether it was a gift or not. Holding Sherlock's female product gift package, they found a random excuse of "I remembered something," and disappeared without a trace in an instant. The only ones left were the two lollies, who were more difficult to deal with. As for the two little girls, Sherlock was naturally unwilling to neglect them. Didn't he see that when he was giving gifts to the 5 uncles, the two little girls had already started to assemble C4? Sherlock had no doubt that, if his gifts could not satisfy the two little girls, he would inevitably have to play a scene with them where he ran away and she chased, and if he dared to resist, I would dare to cry. Fortunately, the two little girls were still in their childhood, and had no resistance to cute things. The mini and cute Donald Duck and Daisy that Sherlock brought back successfully captured the hearts of the two little girls. Combined with the gift package of alien food that Sherlock brought back, the resentment of the two little girls towards Sherlock disappeared without a trace. After relaxing their mentality, the two little girls naturally began to be interested in Sherlock's space adventure for more than a month. Sherlock saw that the pillow was right next to him when he was sleepy. He did not hide it, and began to tell the two little girls about his legendary life for more than a month. Even when he was excited, Sherlock would constantly take out his collection for on-site demonstration to prove that he was absolutely not bragging. Half an hour later, Sherlock wanted to cry, but had no tears. He sat on the ground with a decadent look on his face, constantly blaming himself for being so stupid and being happy too early. As for why it turned out like this, the reason was actually very simple. The two favorite Myodeo lightsabers in Sherlock's collection were spotted by Tulalita girls, and each of them took one away. And looking at the appearance of the Tulalita girls, it was obvious that these two Myodeo-shaped lightsabers, which were even taller than their height after unfolding, were more liked by them than the two pet ducks that Sherlock gave them. What? You said you could not give it to them? Oh my god. Go ask the entire training ground who dares to really mess with these two serious group pets. Don't look at these two little girls yelling at the group of students in the training ground. If these two little girls are really bullied outside, believe it or not, the person who dares to bully them will face the revenge of the Avengers, Black Widow, the military, and the armed forces of the underworld in the White World. It can be said that apart from those mysterious guys on the mysterious side, these two little girls are the two people with the most powerful backgrounds on this earth in the true sense. In other words, Sherlock dares to tease these two little girls, and if he accidentally makes them cry, he will face the circle kick of his 5 uncles. What can Sherlock do? Sherlock is also desperate. Sherlock, who was robbed of his beloved things, feels that his dream of pretending to be powerful has been shattered in an instant, but the education of the two little girls is also imminent. After all, looking around the world, which cute little girl likes to wield swords and guns, and likes to be a C4 to listen to the sound when she has nothing to do? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 385, Trouble at the Door. After Sherlock had been preparing himself for the loss of his beloved sword for a long time, he reluctantly let it go. Of course, he let it go, but he still had to collect interest. So Sherlock rubbed the two Lolita's golden and green hairs a few times, and it felt good. If Sherlock had done this in normal times, he would have received fierce resistance from the two Lolita, but as a saying goes, a man who eats someone's food should be grateful, and the two Lolita got stories, pets, and weapons, so he naturally gritted his teeth and enjoyed it. Although he didn't say anything, every time Sherlock rubbed it, the two Lolita took out the laser knives in their hands, and waved them for a while, and even staged a fake two-person confrontation. Sherlock was so distressed that he kept twitching. You know, he couldn't bear to let his beloved two swords chop each other like this. Although the blades were lasers, it was really painful to watch. In the end, Sherlock couldn't stand the two little girls returning their bitches ways and laughed, then ignored the two little girls' silver bell-like laughter and quickly ran away to his hut. How to say it? The sadness is so great, and the only thing that can heal me is the cute, soft, and fragrant little coal ball. When Sherlock returned home, he picked up the little coal ball who was taking a nap on the sofa and started sucking it crazily. At the beginning, the little coal ball was still very fond of Sherlock, so he sucked it. But when Sherlock became more and more excessive, and his posture was not like a cat sucker, but like a pervert, the little coal ball began to be unable to stand Sherlock, the hairless monkey. After giving Sherlock a few gentle meow punches without stretching his claws, he jumped out of Sherlock's arms and ran away cursing. Well, you can tell from the cry that the little coal ball cursed very dirty, but Sherlock didn't care. With 4 or 5 red cat paw prints on his face, he happily took his toiletries and ran to his luxurious bathroom to enjoy himself. To say that the human species is definitely a cheapskate, especially people like Sherlock, who are even more of a fighter among the cheapskates. When Sherlock was living an extremely exciting life in the universe, licking blood on the tip of a knife with his head tied to his belt every day, and walking on a tightrope on the cliff, he missed his leisurely life in the training ground very much. At that time, he thought that, when he went back, he would take a bath every day, play with cats, and bully his own children. How happy would his life be? But after Sherlock had lived such a leisurely life for nearly a week, he began to feel bored again. Especially when Tony, a guy who had similar tastes with him, was not there. Sherlock felt that he was about to explode with boredom. What? Why did Tony disappear for a whole week? Well, It's very simple, because last time she and Sherlock just sent a text message and ran to the universe to spend more than a month. Pepper was angry, and very angry, the kind that Tony couldn't coax her with the gifts she bought. So Pepper grounded Tony. Well, this is the usual trick used by parents in Eagle Source to deal with their own naughty children. And it's not just an ordinary grounding. Tony must stay in his villa. Tony is not allowed to step out of the villa, and no one is allowed to come to Tony, especially Sherlock. You know, the villa in Sherlock's training ground is not like Tony's beach villa with a garage as its own scientific research base. There is nothing in this villa. Tony can only do fitness and running in the gym at home. The rest can only watch TV and play games. If it were someone else, they might like this kind of life. But for Tony, it is indeed a punishment. After all, asking a mad scientist not to go to his own laboratory is enough to make Tony collapse. Moreover, Sherlock learned from the grapevine that this punishment was only exchanged for Tony's numerous gifts and good behavior at night. Otherwise, the punishment would definitely be greater than this. Sherlock had no opinion on this, and even thought of how to mock his dear uncle. Ah, isn't this my underage uncle who has been out of date for decades? Sherlock was looking forward to what expression Tony would have on his face when he said this. But many things often don't go as people wish. It seems that God can't stand Sherlock's idle and mean appearance, and began to arrange a big trouble for Sherlock. At the beginning, no one would notice that there would occasionally be a few patients who wanted to buy medicine in the gun shop that served as the front of Sherlock's house. Unit 01 and Unit 02, who were the front desk and cashier, thought that these people had gone to the wrong place at first. But as time went on, Unit 01 and Unit 02 began to notice something wrong, because the people who wanted to buy medicine never stopped coming. The two robots quickly listed a survey form, and found that the number of people who wanted to come for medicine was increasing, and the frequency of repeated visits was also increasing. If this continued, it might affect the normal operation of the gun shop. So the two robots generated a report without hesitation and submitted it. In the end, the report passed through Price's hands and reached Sherlock. Sherlock was sitting on the sofa at home, holding the PS5 game controller in one hand and the report in the other, looking at Price standing opposite him with a constipated face. Price looked at Sherlock's expression, as if he had already had a plan to deal with it, and shrugged at Sherlock helplessly before saying, "Don't look at me like that. After all, you are the only one in the entire training ground who has properly lit up the healing skill. So now, hurry up and solve this not so small trouble for me." Under the pressure of Price, Sherlock could only reluctantly close the game, put on a set of clothes casually, and walk towards the gun shop that he hadn't been to for a long time with an unwilling look. "I'll go see what's going on." It is impossible to say that Sherlock was not angry. After all, no one with a good family would be willing to take the pot when a pot falls from the sky. But soon, Sherlock's anger disappeared without a trace. The reason was very simple, because Sherlock found that, damn, curing diseases really makes money. Chapter 386. Who the hell told you that I can cure diseases? That's right, Sherlock did need to deal with those guys who came to ask for medicine. But soon, Sherlock found that many of these people were rich and free, and as long as they could treat the disease well, they would ask for any price. Sherlock looked at her and thought, wow, isn't this Chunchin coming to give Sherlock money? Sherlock didn't bother to deal with how these people knew that he could cure their diseases that modern medicine was helpless against. He immediately made a small single room in the original lounge of the gun shop as a treatment room, and announced that he would only receive one patient a day. Well, it can only be said that ideals are full and reality is very skinny. According to the idea, he would only receive one patient a day, lock the person in the so-called treatment room for 24 hours until the effect of the entry disappeared, and the disease was cured, and he could also get some extra money. This was a win-win situation. But Sherlock forgot the bad nature of human beings, especially the bad nature of survival. After curing the first patient, he learned that Sherlock only received one patient a day. The guys who came to ask for medicine almost fought at Sherlock's door. In less than one night, a large number of RVs and tents appeared at the door of Sherlock's gun shop. Every morning when Sherlock appeared at the door of the gun shop, that scene was like a gathering of popular traffic stars and crazy fans. the hands that kept waving in front of him, and the hideous heads that were trying to grab the opportunity made Sherlock's intensive phobia almost come out. Under desperation, Sherlock could only let Unit 01 create a small program overnight so that this group of crazy patients could line up. Of course, Sherlock must not let go of the registration fee. In a whole week, Sherlock discovered the essence of the facts. Damn, the hospital really makes money. Never feel what it means to set a price, as long as it can be cured. Damn, 3 days. 3 people in 3 days. This so-called treatment cost has exceeded the monthly sales of Sherlock's gun shop. The most important thing is that there are some big guys who are afraid that Sherlock will be reported for practicing medicine illegally. I don't know what kind of relationship they used, but the next day they sent Sherlock a genuine PhD certificate from Harvard Medical School and a full set of medical qualification certificates with official seals. Sherlock was so confused by the operation. He just fed 3 people a mouthful of magic potion, and he became a doctor of medicine, or the kind with certification. Even if you check it, you can't find any problems. I can only say that in the Eagle source, money can really do whatever you want. But gradually, with the development of time, Sherlock began to find something wrong. Damn, why are there so many difficult and complicated diseases? And these are some diseases that Sherlock has never heard of in his 2 lifetimes. God knows what kind of life Sherlock is living now. During the day, he sends one person to the treatment room and then calls the next person in and takes away the person's medical records and examination reports. Then he went home and looked up what this disease he had never heard of in a full set of medical books that were as tall as his little girl. After understanding what the situation was, Sherlock went to his library to find the diagnosis and treatment manual of St. Mungo's Hospital to see if there were any treatment records to see how others treated it. After understanding it, he opened the potion manual to find out where those potions he had never heard of were hidden to see how simple they were. If they were simple, he would prepare them himself. If they were difficult, he would just buy them from the vending machine. For a whole half month, the simplest disease Sherlock treated was a patient who had been waiting in line 5 days ago and had high paraplegia due to spinal damage caused by his love of extreme sports. Sherlock finally understood why someone in his previous life said that those who persuaded people to study medicine would be struck by lightning. Look at what a damn life Sherlock has been living for the past half month. He ran to the treatment room early in the morning, released yesterday's patients first, then let today's patients in, then injected potions and cast a coma spell, and then asked tomorrow's patients to come in, and took the cases and reports back to look up information in books. This search took a whole day. This time Sherlock finally understood why the doctors in the hospital all ended up with the same Mediterranean hairstyle. Damn it, even if there is no such gene, anyone would be bald if they did it this way. Now Sherlock admires those doctors who work diligently and regard curing diseases and saving lives as their lifelong career. It is really not easy for them. Of course, it is no wonder that they make a lot of money, but Sherlock just has an inexplicable anger in his heart that he can't vent. He is obviously a salted fish. How the hell did he become like this now? Sherlock even felt that his life now is more difficult than the 7 years of training when he just crossed over. Finally, Sherlock couldn't help it. One morning, he caught a patient coming out of the treatment room and started to question him. Who on earth told you that I can treat diseases? The answer surprised Sherlock. It was the First People's Hospital of New York City. The doctors of the Presbyterian Hospital told them. After getting the news, Sherlock immediately suspended the treatment for tomorrow and drove straight to the First Hospital of New York. Sherlock wanted to see where these doctors got the news from. But what Sherlock never expected was that he was welcomed by all the doctors of the First Hospital of New York. As soon as he arrived at the hospital, there was even a banner made of paper saying "Welcome to the Great God" for inspection. Well, the banner was made very roughly, and it was not difficult to see that it was rushed. But for this attitude, Sherlock couldn't get angry anymore. He could only be sent to the reception room with a stinky face by these doctors with an extremely respectful and humble attitude. After communicating with this group of doctors, Sherlock was completely confused. Listening to the nonsense about the magic medicine and the blessing of the goddess of life from the mouths of these doctors, Sherlock once doubted whether this mother was really talking about him. Was he so awesome? And the blessing of the goddess of life. Why didn't he know that he could do this? Sherlock really didn't know whether the blessing of the goddess of life was there, but he was definitely being watched by the goddess of death. This mother was different from what these doctors said. Could it be that these doctors had made a mistake? After brainstorming in his mind, Sherlock decisively raised his doubts to the doctors. Don't let these doctors really make a mistake. It would be bad to delay the treatment of other patients. As for Sherlock's statement, this group of doctors directly denied it on the spot. Some respected doctors even wanted to give Sherlock a pill on the spot, begging Sherlock to save those poor patients, who they were helpless from the hands of the disease, which made Sherlock quite helpless. After thinking it over again and again, Sherlock finally agreed, but in exchange, Sherlock needed to know who told them that he had the ability to cure these patients. Sherlock originally thought that it was someone from S.H.I.E.L.D., Hydra, or Black Egg who leaked the news, but what Sherlock never expected was that the person who leaked the news and made up countless lies for him was actually his own uncle, Tony Stark. Sherlock, who walked out of the hospital, gritted his teeth and shouted the name of the culprit in the car. Chapter 387, Doing Business with Camotage. Knowing who had cheated him, Sherlock would never let him go. Fortunately, Tony, who was afraid of Sherlock's ridicule, or for some other reason, often disappeared in his armor and was gone for a whole day, so Sherlock rarely saw him. Along the way, Sherlock almost stepped on the accelerator into the fuel tank. Sherlock couldn't wait to rush to his training ground. Sherlock had already thought about how to retaliate against Tony, the cheater. After entering the training ground, Sherlock called a steel engineering team's armor without any pause and went straight to the first spaceship created by Tony. According to Sherlock's order, the construction armor quickly dismantled the machine on the spaceship that could generate food. What? If it was dismantled, what would it do in the future? Haha, Sherlock didn't care about that. Just go and eat dry food. Under Sherlock's command, the engineering armor installed the food machine found on the spaceship in the kitchen in the public area. How to say it, at least Sherlock was freed from the job of cooking. Although the taste of the food made by this food machine is definitely not as good as that of human handmade food, it is convenient. Moreover, it is a combination of Chinese and Western. As long as you have a recipe, anything can be quickly produced by this thing, which can be regarded as a small benefit in Sherlock's training ground. Of course, this thing is currently only available to Black Widow and Sherlock's 5 uncles, the Avengers and their families. Revenge is revenge, but the main problem is still not solved, that is, Sherlock still has to face countless patients every day. Although he retaliated against Tony and got himself a small benefit, Sherlock is still indignant. Damn it, Tony dug a big hole for himself this time. Although he can milk, he is not pure milk. If he continues like this, he may start to transform into pure milk. I dare not say anything else, but the biggest improvement in Sherlock's magic recently is her medical magic and her potions. Where can I go to reason with this? Lying in bed at night, Sherlock turned over and over, trying to think of a solution. After all, if he didn't think of a solution, he would really become a doctor. Fortunately, Sherlock had a good memory, and in the early morning, Sherlock really thought of a solution. If Sherlock remembered correctly, when Doctor Strange took his first step, the desperate Doctor Strange found a patient with high paraplegia on his medical record and wanted to know how this guy got healthy. And this former high paraplegic patient who was playing basketball gave Doctor Strange the address of Camotage, which allowed Benedict Cumberbatch, who had a long face, to successfully switch from a doctor to a magician. In other words, does it mean that Camotage actually has the ability to treat some lesions that muggles regard as terminal illnesses? The plan worked. Sherlock decided to suspend his doctor's business for one day tomorrow and go to Camotage to see if he could negotiate a deal. As long as Sherlock succeeds, Camotage will not lack magicians, and he will be freed from the heavy medical career. Of course, it is definitely nonsense to say that Sherlock is not afraid. The person Sherlock fears most in the entire Marvel universe, on Earth, is probably the boiled egg Ancient One. After all, this guy is too similar to Dumbledore. He likes to play a trick on the Riddler at any time. It is not an exaggeration to say that under the blessing of the time stone, as long as the Ancient One does not want you to know, even if she takes out your underwear to see what color it is, you will not know it. Anyway, Sherlock always feels that he has no secrets in front of the Ancient One. Sherlock even doubts whether his XP is known by this great god. This is also the reason why Sherlock has been dragging his feet and not going to Camotage to ask the Ancient One about the reality gem. After all, no one wants to appear in front of another person with a naked butt, right? This time, Sherlock was really driven to the edge of his seat. Otherwise Sherlock probably would not want to appear in front of the Ancient One again in his life. Of course, even now, Sherlock still had a glimmer of hope and made a decision that went against his ancestors. That's right, Sherlock planned to go to the New York Temple of Camotage to talk first. What if it worked out in one go? The next morning, Sherlock got up early without sleeping for long and drove all the way to the New York Temple of Camotage. What Sherlock didn't expect was that when he arrived at the gate of the New York Temple, the fat wizard king who used to play well with him was already waiting at the gate of the temple. Seeing Sherlock get out of the car, the king's first words made Sherlock feel creepy, and the feeling of being naked in front of Ancient One suddenly appeared. "Good morning, Sherlock. The Supreme Sorcerer asked me to wait for you. He said you will bring an ingenious change to Camotage." Listening to Wang's enthusiastic words, Sherlock got goosebumps all over his body. It can only be said that the time stone is a bit scary, but for the sake of his future happy life, Sherlock still tried to put on an awkward smile on his face and followed Wang into the New York Temple. It should be said that this is Sherlock's first time to come to the New York Temple. The architectural appearance of the entire New York Temple is very much like the stereotype of the church, but as soon as you enter the interior, you can feel that the decoration and furnishings inside have nothing to do with the church. Wang didn't waste time and started talking to Sherlock about Sherlock's so-called business. In fact, the content is very simple. Camotage will accept the patients pushed by Sherlock, but the premise is that Sherlock needs to ensure that these people have magical talent. As for the mentality of those pushed over, Sherlock does not need to be responsible. And even if these people's character does not pass Camotage's assessment, Camotage will find a way to treat these people. Of course, the cost will definitely not be low. As for those who have no magical talent, Sherlock can only be responsible for the treatment. It has to be said that Camotage's routine this time is indeed a closed loop, which can not only guarantee Camotage's source of funds, but also ensure the increase in the number of magicians in Camotage, and Sherlock can also be liberated from the heavy medical work. Although I don't know why, Sherlock always has the illusion that if he agrees, he will work for Camotage, but for the sake of his own beautiful salted fish life, Sherlock gritted his teeth and agreed to the agreement proposed by Wang. So now the only question is, how should Sherlock know whether this person has a talent for magic? Chapter 388, Camotage has developed into this now? Wang laughed at Sherlock's worry and didn't say anything about asking Sherlock to follow him. Sherlock didn't think too much and followed Wang to wander around the New York Temple. It must be said that the scale of the entire New York Temple looks much larger than it looks from the outside. Although it is certain that Camotage will never use the traceless expansion spell in its own magic system, Sherlock can roughly guess how Camotage accomplishes similar things. In fact, it is very simple. There is a magic similar to the traceless expansion spell in Camotage's magic system. Yes, it is the magic that was taken offline in the movie because it was too expensive, the mirror space. However, the mirror space cannot directly fix the expanded space after expansion like the traceless expansion spell. It needs to use extremely complex magic arrays to stabilize the expanded space. The reason why the New York Temple can make the internal space look much larger than the external building is actually mainly because it is one of the 3 major temples of Camotage to protect the earth. And for Sherlock, because it is a mirror space, the interior of the entire New York Temple actually makes people feel like walking in a maze. But it should be said that Camotage is really rich. At least in terms of magic, Camotage is definitely the richest magic group on Earth. Along the way, Sherlock has seen all kinds of magic props, and each magic prop has different functions, which makes Sherlock dazzled. You have to know that this is the New York Temple, not the treasure house of Kamataj headquarters. God knows what new things will be in the treasure house of Kamataj. Sherlock didn't say to show it to himself when he went there last time. Damn it, boiled egg actually hid it for himself. Sherlock, who was smiling on the surface, followed Wang and finally came to a place that looked like a warehouse. There were countless objects covered with white cloth. If it weren't for the good sunlight here and the warm feeling of the decoration, the things covered with white cloth in this room alone would make people feel like they were on the set of a horror movie. Unfortunately, Wang did not empathize with Sherlock. After leading Sherlock here, Wang walked directly to a towering object and removed the white cloth on the object, raising a large amount of dust. The dust raise successfully made Wang, who originally wanted to show off, cough violently. He kept slapping the air around him to try to drive away the floating dust. Combined with his fat body, it made people feel inexplicably funny. After watching the excitement for a while, Sherlock finally showed mercy and rewarded Wang with a cleanup, which earned Wang's jealous complaints. Got, Sherlock, even though it has been many times, I still have to sigh that your magic is really too convenient. Sherlock rolled his eyes helplessly at Wang's words, as if he didn't want to pay attention to Wang, and turned his eyes to the object that Wang wanted to cover. Sherlock fell silent after just one look. The reason was very simple. Damn it, are you sure this thing is a magic creation, not a portal metal detector that can be seen everywhere in stadiums and airports? The difference between this thing and that portal metal detector is that there is an extra light bulb on the head. There is no difference, right? Even the material looks exactly the same. Both are made of plastic. And the most important thing is that, even if this thing is placed in an airport or a stadium, it will probably be disliked by people. Look at the old-fashioned light bulb on the head of this thing, while the latest version of portal metal detectors has evolved to LED. You took me so far, back, and forth, just to show me an old-fashioned portal metal detector? Sherlock, who had been holding back for a long time, finally couldn't suppress his desire to complain, and began to complain mercilessly to Wang, who was standing next to this thing with a smug look on his face. After listening to Sherlock's ruthless complaints, Wang rolled his eyes helplessly, showing an expression that said, if you don't understand, don't talk nonsense, and explained to Sherlock. Don't talk nonsense, this is the latest magical creation developed by Kamataj. The wizards in Kamataj have fully exerted their imagination and combined magic with ordinary items to create a new technology. We call it. Wang was interrupted by Sherlock with a constipated look before he finished speaking. Abuse of Muggle items? Or illegal transformation of Muggle items? Or the Weirly family magic transformation method? Speaking of which, Kamataj has developed into this now? It's no wonder that Sherlock interrupted Wang's words and was thinking about it. After all, this thing looks like the flying car in the Weirly family. Obviously, there is no Harry Potter masterpiece in this world, and Wang doesn't understand the jokes in Sherlock's mouth. He looked at Sherlock in confusion for a while, before speaking with disdain. Don't interrupt me, what's Muggle or not, we call this magic technology transformation, and the one in front of you is the magic adaptability detection machine produced by Kamataj. This thing can detect the magic adaptability of everyone who passes through it. The stronger the adaptability, the brighter the light bulb on it. Isn't it amazing? After Wang finished speaking, he looked at Sherlock with a smug look on his face, as if waiting for Sherlock's exaggeration, but the exaggeration didn't come, but Sherlock's ruthless complaints. So, what is the use of this thing? Among a group of mages in Kamataj, detect whether there are any reporters who have sneaked into Kamataj by taking advantage of the situation. Sherlock's complaints hit Wang's pain point very accurately. The proud look on Wang's face faded away, and his small eyes began to roll around constantly. He didn't dare to look at Sherlock, and could only answer Sherlock's questions hesitantly. So this thing is just sitting here gathering dust. Well, don't worry about the details. Although this thing is useless to Kamataj, it is very helpful to you, isn't it? Sherlock looked at the pretentious Wang with contempt, and the contempt in his eyes was not even hidden. Ah, yes, you are right. So can I take this thing back now? Sherlock didn't want to continue to tangle with Wang at all. It was too much drama. Chapter 389, the only researcher in Kamatage. I dare not say anything else, but there is one thing Sherlock can be sure of, that is, the thing in front of him is definitely an alchemical work, but how to describe the level of alchemy? It's like the dumbest child among the disciples, accepted by the alchemy teacher, holding an attitude of fooling around, and making the first work casually. In summary, it depends on the difference. And what makes Sherlock most want to complain, but can't say it is, that he can't change this thing himself. As for why it can't be changed, there are actually two reasons. The first point is that Sherlock's magic system is really different from Kamatage's magic system, and Sherlock really doesn't know how Kamatage determines whether a person has a talent to learn magic. After all, Sherlock's magic is a pure talent-based magic. If you are born without it, then there is a high probability that you will be a muggle all your life. The most important thing is that Sherlock can't ask about this thing. After all, to put it simply, this is a judgment standard, not a secret of gods and demons, but to put it more broadly, how to judge whether a person has talent can even be related to inheritance. After all, Sherlock has not yet been prepared to become a part of Kamatage, so he naturally doesn't want to cause trouble for himself, so he didn't ask. The second point, and the most critical point, is that according to Wang, the wizard who made this thing doesn't even know how it succeeded. He can't even copy it, so according to Wang, it's best not to do anything to this thing. Don't touch a screw, don't change anything, use it if it can be used. If it's broken, it can't be repaired. After listening to Wang's explanation, Sherlock was speechless. What is this? This thing is not just a bunch of bugs written, but these bugs can still run normally, and even achieve the expected effect? Good guy, Sherlock exclaimed. Is it my pure power of thinking that has blessed me? At the same time, Sherlock was quite speechless about this alchemist. Let's not talk about why you, a person who studies this thing, don't make experimental records. Just looking at your work, Sherlock even felt like he had seen an online joke in his previous life. A college student studying chemistry was doing an experiment in class. Seeing that the reactants of his classmates were similar to the soil outside, in order to complete the homework conveniently, he went directly to the small flower bed outside to dig a shovel, and submitted it as homework. But she never expected that there would be a follow-up. The teacher asked everyone to use the product to catalyze the reaction. Hey, everyone failed, but his shovel of soil succeeded. Now the teacher asked him to write an experimental report to summarize his experience, and then teach his classmates how he succeeded. He was dumbfounded. In Sherlock's opinion, this alchemist of Kamatage was similar to this college student. If he were his teacher, he would definitely point at this guy's nose and scold him for hours without repeating himself. But in the end, Sherlock gave up the idea. After all, it was not easy for a research talent to appear among the barbarians of Kamatage, a group of Malay mages. If he really became autistic because of this guy, the boiled egg lady would probably beat him for a day and a night, and then tie him to the beam of the gate of Kamatage for a week. Sherlock has no other advantages, but he is very good at himself, so Sherlock decisively suppressed his inner thoughts of being a teacher, and moved this thing into the back of his car with a levitation spell. Then, when Wang stood at the door of the temple like an old woman, waving his handkerchief and reluctant to leave, Sherlock stepped on the accelerator into the tank with a dark face, and decisively fled from here. It was really too damn embarrassing. After returning home, Sherlock decisively pressed this piece of defense at the door of his gun shop, but it was installed, and it still needed to be modified. Although the main body of this thing cannot be touched, it does not mean that some peripherals cannot be added to it, right? Sherlock used transfiguration and some parts to make a small gadget, a plastic cover that can just cover the top light bulb, and a lumen detector is integrated on this cover. As long as this thing is put on the light bulb, as long as the light bulb is lit, the lumen detector in the cover can detect the brightness of the light bulb so as to judge the quality of the person's magic. And all the data will be transmitted to the processors of the two robots through the wireless transmitter integrated on the cover. According to Sherlock's settings, as long as a certain threshold is reached, Unit 01 and Unit 02 will give the detector the approximate address of Kamatage and let people go to find Kamatage for treatment. Of course, if the threshold is not reached, it's okay. Unit 01 and Unit 02 will receive the case and report and make it into a file for archiving. Sherlock will come to collect it every month and then concentrate on treating these unlucky people who were not selected by Camotage. Of course, Sherlock, the sixth brother, will definitely not make himself uncomfortable. After all the decision conditions are based on this threshold, and the threshold set by Sherlock, the sixth brother, is 1. In other words, unless this light bulb is not bright at all and is a pure magic insulator, otherwise, the final result of these people coming to ask for medicine will be Camotage. After Sherlock, who had settled everything, hid in the dark and stared for a while. After finding that there was no problem, he relaxed at the moment, whistling happily and preparing to return to his nest. As for the rest of the daily maintenance, Sherlock had thought about it and handed it over to Black Widow and Hawkeye, two guys who had nothing to do in the training ground. But Sherlock didn't find the two after searching around, let alone Black Widow and Hawkeye, and even Antonia Sherlock, who jumped out from time to time to show her presence after Black Widow came to Sherlock's training ground. After asking his 5 uncles, Sherlock knew where the few people had gone. It turned out that the captain had requested support. As mentioned before, Captain and Falcon are committed to fighting the remnants of Hydra and investigating the whereabouts of their good friend Badgie and strive to rescue their good friend Badgie. But things did not go as planned. As the saying goes, a lean camel is bigger than a horse. Even if most of the Hydra leaders were arrested or executed, there are still many remnants scattered around the world. It can be said that there are all kinds of people and facilities, and even the sizes are different. Captain found a large number of Hydra bases in the chaotic area of South America, so many that he and Falcon could not beat them alone, so in desperation, Captain could only ask for the help of the Avengers. Black Widow and Hawkeye, who were idle in the training ground at Sherlock's house, naturally agreed to the captain's request immediately, and even in order to train Antonia, Black Widow brought her little apprentice with her. It happened to be with the captain, and he could also let the captain train Antonia's shield again. As for why Tony became elusive after the end of house arrest, it is actually for this reason. Although Tony still said that he hated the captain, his body was very honest. When the captain was in trouble, he was the one who rushed forward without hesitation. Chapter 390 Anna, I need help. Of course, Sherlock is not interested in the Hydra. After all, both Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. are equal to trouble in Sherlock's eyes. Moreover, they are located in the no man's land of South America. Sherlock can imagine how inhumane the Hydra group will be in that no man's land. The Hydra in the headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D. is at most doing scientific research and making some things that are too powerful or too stupid, but the Hydra in other places, well, human experiments are light. After all, the integrity of this group of people is basically equal to that of the Japanese devils in Sherlock's eyes. It is better to expect dogs to become humans than to expect them to do human things. At least dogs have the characteristic of loyalty. And the most important thing is that, since several people have not contacted him, it means that he should not be used at this stage. After all, Sherlock's wizard vest can be said to represent the most mysterious and powerful person among the Avengers. There is no need for anti-aircraft guns to appear to hit a mosquito. So as expected, Sherlock returned to his salted fish life and began to immerse himself in the ocean of games. Every day, he got up, opened Fatal Company to have fun, then ate, took a bath, watched videos or TV at night, and went to bed at a certain time. Every day, he lived a wonderful life that workers dreamed of, which can be said to be very enviable. And it seemed that God couldn't stand Sherlock being so comfortable and wanted to find some trouble for Sherlock. Not long after Sherlock's comfortable days, a person Sherlock almost forgot called Sherlock. Sherlock, I need your help. Anna. The caller was Anna, the Anna with the face of the young version of Anne Hathaway. After receiving Anna's call, Sherlock almost jumped up from the sofa at once, and even felt a little unreal for a while. After all, Sherlock's contact with K was only a few K people among the trainees in the training ground, except for the last time, when he helped Black Widow with Anna. Help? What help? What happened? Where are you now, Anna? Sherlock asked about Anna's situation like a string of cannonballs. After all, Sherlock was Sherlock's first love after traveling through time, so he still cared about Anna. After hearing Sherlock's string of cannonballs, Anna breathed a sigh of relief, put on a beautiful smile on her face again, and told Sherlock an address that Sherlock had never expected. At the gate of his own training ground, Sherlock didn't waste time and directly opened a portal for Anna to enter his living room to see what kind of help Anna needed. And Anna didn't hesitate to tell Sherlock what happened. The cause of the incident was very simple. Anna tracked down an arms dealer from Russia who would sell some terrorist weapons in the Eagle Source, a miniaturized nuclear bomb. After Anna knew about this, she immediately reported it to the top management of K, but because of the fact that S.H.I.E.L.D. became S.H.I.E.L.D. not long ago, K was also in the process of self-examination, and there were not many people to support Anna, so they could only temporarily put together a small team to provide support for Anna. But this team, well, how to describe it? In Anna's words, it's hard to describe. Although everyone is at the top of the industry, everyone is a weirdo. Anna really doesn't have the confidence to take this group of weirdos to deal with a cunning weapons dealer, so she can only contact Sherlock and hope to get Sherlock's support. In fact, Sherlock originally just wanted to help if he could. If it was too troublesome, Sherlock would just give Anna some props or potions. But when Anna finished speaking, Sherlock's interest rose instead. Weirdos? Or is everyone a weirdo? Sherlock didn't dare to think about how much fun such a team would have. He patted his chest and said, "I, Sherlock, will help you with this. Let me see how it goes." Seeing that Sherlock agreed, Anna was relieved and was about to take Sherlock with her. Sherlock didn't hesitate. After all, many things were stuffed in his library by Sherlock, so there was no need to pack anything. He got in the car and left with Anna. Half an hour later, Sherlock looked at the airport in front of him and fell into deep thought. The series of experiences in the Middle East once again surfaced in Sherlock's mind. After thinking again and again, Sherlock carefully asked Anna about the destination of this trip. Anna didn't hesitate and handed the plane ticket in her hand to Sherlock on the spot. Sherlock looked carefully and saw Las Vegas. There are two places in the Eagle Source that are famous in the whole entertainment industry. One is Florida, which is full of weird things. Here you can have no money, but you can't live without it. Another famous place is the gambling city of Las Vegas. Unlike Florida, Florida is weird, while Las Vegas is crazy. In this city with gambling civilization, if you don't go crazy, you really can't fit into this crazy city. In Las Vegas, it's normal for you to encounter any crazy things. After all, you can't expect all the gamblers in a city to be like normal people, right? But speaking of it, Sherlock has never been to this famous gambling city since he traveled through time. As for the reason, it is very simple. Sherlock is not interested. After all, Sherlock can count the number of things he can play in his two lives on one hand. The only poker games he can play are Landlord and Turtle. He can't even play Mahjong. That's right, although Sherlock was a pure abbot in his previous life, his mother's Sherlock doesn't know how to play Mahjong, the quintessence of rabbits. Sherlock, who can only play Turtle and Landlord, really has no interest in Las Vegas. After all, no casino will have a special seat for Turtle and Landlord. Even if there is, it will be a loss according to Sherlock's level. So for Sherlock, this famous city in the United States is just a city with super luxurious hotels. Of course, this is also the first choice for Nilai Watts in the Eagle Source. It is a famous entertainment city with madness and romance. When Sherlock first crossed over, he also imagined where he and his lover would go on vacation. What Sherlock never expected was that he had never been to a place before, but this time, by chance, he and Anna went there. Don't say, under the blessing of these attributes of Las Vegas, Sherlock was quite looking forward to this trip. After all, few people can resist Anne Hathaway's beauty, right? But when Sherlock and Anna landed in Las Vegas, Sherlock realized that, well, he was too happy a little too early. Chapter 391, A Grand Reward for Human Species Diversity, Part 1. To be honest, Sherlock still had a lot of fantasies before the plane landed. After all, when he was at the training ground, Anna kept complaining about how weird the so-called teammates that Kay assigned to her were. According to normal people's thinking, First of all, Anna despised her teammates very much, and secondly, she came to ask for help. Does that mean that when they arrive in Las Vegas, Anna will spend most of her time with him? Combined with the unique style of Las Vegas, Sherlock even felt like he was about to become Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Well, that's what Sherlock thought anyway. But all of Sherlock's fantasies disappeared without a trace after he saw Anna's team members at the exit of the airport. What? Why could Sherlock lock onto the so-called teammate of Anna in the crowd of people waiting to meet him? If you saw what Sherlock saw, you would also lock onto Anna's weird teammate at a glance. Can you imagine a man who is nearly 2 meters tall, weighs at least 200 kilograms, has dark skin, a big beard, and a hideous scar on his face, like an iron tower? She was wearing a Scottish skirt. She was wearing a tight sleeveless sweater on her upper body, and there was a sentence printed on the sweater: "I fucking love skirts." Then she was waving at you with her big white teeth. If Sherlock hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he probably couldn't imagine what kind of picture it was, even if he sacrificed all his brain cells. However, the most explosive thing was the feeling given to Sherlock by the other people who were waiting at the station. Damn, I don't know if they were used to such things, or if such things were just common things in crazy Las Vegas. The group of locals around didn't even bother to look at this strong man in a skirt, who was as tall as an iron tower. Note that it's not the kind of fear that dares to look, but the kind of daily experience that ignores it, as if such a weird thing is just a daily thing in their eyes. It must be said that this was the first time in Sherlock's 2 lifetimes that he felt what cultural differences were, and what the magical correctness of the eagle source was. Sherlock felt that his 3 views had suffered a severe impact. However, as Anna approached the iron tower-like sturdy man in a skirt, Sherlock realized that he had impacted too early. After Anna led Sherlock to this sissy and sissy man who couldn't be next to the sissy man, Sherlock looked at Anna eagerly and took a deep breath before introducing her to Sherlock. Reinhard Hopkins, the best supporter in the combat unit in the K, is a master at using a machine gun and is a person you can trust with your back. After introducing Reinhard Hopkins, Anna turned around and introduced Sherlock to Reinhard Hopkins. Sherlock Felix, codename Magician, owner of the farm, is my friend. Anna did not reveal too much information about Sherlock, but only gave a rough idea. However, even so, Reinhard Hopkins was very enthusiastic and extended his big hand like a palm leaf fan to Sherlock. "Hello, Sherlock. I'm a supporter in the Black Ops team, codename Black Panther. As you can see, I'm a gay and a transvestite. Please don't mind." After hearing Reinhard Hopkins' self-introduction, Sherlock felt speechless for a while. How to say it? Although this guy seems a bit weird in appearance and behavior, he makes people feel silly. After trying hard to show a friendly smile at the corner of his mouth, Sherlock also shook hands with Reinhard Hopkins. Although he looked calm on the surface, his heart was constantly surging. I will never look Mr. Black Panther in the face and the eyes of Wakanda again. Whenever Sherlock mentions the word Black Panther, the image of Reinhard Hopkins pops up in his mind. God knows if Black Panther will come to silence Reinhard Hopkins if he knows about this. After simply shaking hands with Reinhard Hopkins, a black man with too many element, Sherlock put his arm around Anna's waist without leaving a trace. After Reinhard Hopkins saw Sherlock's action, he gave Sherlock an anti-smile that said "I understand," then turned around and walked out of the airport with the 2 of them. Anna, who was hugged by Sherlock's waist, did not resist. After sighing helplessly, she took Sherlock and followed Reinhard Hopkins' footsteps to walk out of the airport. What? Why didn't Anna resist? Anna knew what Sherlock was thinking with her heels. After all, in K, Reinhard Hopkins' name is known to everyone. Any normal man who meets this guy for the first time will unconsciously hug the women around him to declare his sexual orientation. This is a default thing in K. After all, no normal man is not afraid when facing Reinhard Hopkins, unless he is bigger than this guy. Outside the airport, there is a Yuhang Emperor Escalade parked. When approaching the vehicle, Anna broke free from Sherlock's hand and got into the co-pilot seat without saying anything. Seeing this scene, Sherlock was almost numb. After posing Anna in 108 postures in his mind, he could only reluctantly open the back door. But what Sherlock didn't expect was that as soon as the door opened, he heard a low male voice, which revealed endless vicissitudes, but it was such an intoxicating voice that was saying extremely dog-licking words. "Okay, baby, I will pay attention to what you say. I love you, baby. I will bring you a gift when I get home. Don't worry, when have I ever lied to you?" When Sherlock said this, he still thought that the owner of the voice was an out-and-out licker, but soon, the next sentence of the male voice made Sherlock's mouth twitch fiercely. "Okay, my dear baby, daddy promised you so many conditions, then you have to agree to one condition from daddy, okay? What condition? Of course, stay away from those damn boys in your class. Believe in daddy, they are not good people. Yes, especially that little bastard named Charles." Sherlock looked in the direction of the voice and saw a man with golden hair holding a phone in the driver's seat and talking on the phone. These words were said by this man. After Sherlock tried to calm down the twitching corners of his mouth, he obediently sat in the back seat of the Escalade. When Sherlock sat down and closed the car door, he saw the face of this man who was obsessed with his daughter through the rear view mirror. At one glance, Sherlock was completely dumbfounded. Damn. Brad Pitt. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 392, A Grand Reward for Human Species Diversity, Part 2. Seeing Sherlock's eyes fixed on the rear view mirror of the vehicle, Reinhard Hopkins, who had just got in the car, almost guessed what Sherlock was thinking. He carefully approached Sherlock and introduced him to him in a low voice. "Brad Pitt, the best commando in the Black Ops team, codename Sharp Knife. With him around, he can open up even the most dangerous blockades, but as you can see, this guy is an out-and-out daughter slave. And don't look at him like this now, this guy is an out-and-out alcoholic, and he loves everything that involves drinking. Of course, this is not a bad thing. After all, if you really encounter a desperate situation, just whisper in this guy's ear that a boy named Charles has taken your daughter to a hotel and has prepared a drinking party full of strong liquor. This guy's combat effectiveness will increase several times. The more detailed your description, the stronger this guy's combat effectiveness will be." Listening to Reinhard Hopkins' words, Sherlock's mouth twitched constantly, and he even had a little too much to complain about for a moment. He didn't even know where to start. Let's not talk about the fact that this guy has Brad Pitt's face and his name is Brad Pitt. Just the last sentence is similar to "the beautiful swordsman has brought meat." Is it true? And looking at Reinhard Hopkins' appearance, this group of people is definitely not the first time to do these things. The more detailed the description, the stronger the fighting power. This is not the Pirate King! Exclamation mark. Sherlock is really a little confused at this time. Does K recruit people specifically for weirdos? Now Sherlock really wants to know the standard of K's recruitment. It's hard to find such weirdos, even if they are specifically looking for them. According to Anna, there are 4 people like Reinhard Hopkins and Brad Pitt. Sherlock looked at Anna sitting in the co-pilot with a trace of pity in his eyes. No wonder Anna was forced to call him. If it were him, he would probably start shaking the Avengers. After a while, Brad Pitt finally finished the call and greeted Sherlock through the rear view mirror. "Hey, handsome boy, I believe Reinhard has introduced me to you just now. Just one thing, as long as you don't have any ideas about my daughter and keep an effective distance of more than 10 kilometers from my daughter, you will be my lifelong best friend." What could Sherlock say about this? He could only agree with a smile. God knows how beautiful this guy's daughter is, that she would be treated like this by this guy. Sherlock didn't understand, but was shocked. Seeing that Sherlock agreed, Brad also whistled, gave Sherlock a thumbs up, and took out a bottle of opened whiskey in Sherlock's horrified eyes, and blew half of the bottle in one breath. Dangerous behavior. Please do not imitate. Amid Sherlock's howling of "don't drink and drive, don't drive after drinking, and drive irregularly, your loved ones will shed tears," he stepped on the accelerator and drove straight to the team's safe house. K is the second richest intelligence organization in the United States after SHIELD. When Sherlock arrived, He found out that Kay's so-called safe house was actually a luxurious private room on the top floor of the hotel. Kay rented this room for a long time as a safe house for agents in Las Vegas. After all, the place is big enough, the view is good enough, and most importantly, it is not noticeable enough. When Anna brought Sherlock, Brad and Reinhardt into the room, Sherlock saw the remaining 4 weirdos mentioned by Anna. After Sherlock walked in, he was immediately hugged by a woman, who even pressed Sherlock's face against her chest without saying anything. Sherlock felt a sense of suffocation before he even reacted to what was happening and heard a girl's crazy words in his ears. "Ahaha, where did you find this handsome boy? I'm going to marry this handsome boy. She'll be my honey. Ha 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 ha. Thank you, my dear teammates." When Anna and the other 2 reacted and rushed to pull Sherlock out of the arms of the crazy woman, Sherlock's face was already purple. Sherlock was even more angry and wanted to see who was the one who wanted to suffocate a serious avenger like him. It didn't matter that Sherlock was stunned. He even suspected that he had traveled to the next DC. As for why he thought so, the reason was very simple, because the one who just attacked him was the Harley Quinn in the DC movie Suicide Squad that Sherlock watched before traveling through time in his previous life. That's right, whether it's the appearance, the voice, or even the personality and the dress, they are exactly the same as Harley Quinn in the Suicide Squad. Sherlock looked at Anna beside him with a question mark on his forehead, as if he was asking what the hell was going on. Anna took a deep breath for a long time before she suppressed her urge to curse and introduced her to Sherlock. Harley Quinn, Kay's chief technical support, codename Harley Quinn, super hacker, can hack into almost any electronic system, super nympho, marriage maniac. Sherlock, listen to me, don't be fooled by her appearance, she is just a sick and crazy person. Sherlock was completely dumbfounded after listening to Anna's introduction. Good guy, it really is Harley Quinn, even the name and codename are exactly the same. Sherlock really wants to know where Kay finds these talents. Comic exhibitions? After all, apart from comic exhibitions, it is really difficult to find a person with white skin like Harley Quinn in the movie in real life. Then again, Sherlock has begun to suspect that your Kay's interview is not based on resumes, but on medical records. However, before Sherlock could recover, the door of the next room was pushed open, and an older naked man walked out carelessly, scratching his head as he walked, as if his nap was disturbed. Sherlock felt that his CPU was about to burn out. What the hell was going on? There were people here. Before Sherlock could react, the naked man raised his 2 middle fingers to Sherlock and his group, and started to scold them without caring that he had nothing to cover himself. Fuck, what are you doing making so much noise? Don't you know that I'm taking a nap? Do you have any sense of public morality? Sherlock's eyes almost fell to the ground, and his 3 views were severely impacted. He looked at the naked man who was jumping and cursing, and then turned his head to look at himself. Anna covered her face with extreme exhaustion and introduced to Sherlock Tom Yodel, the top bomb disposal expert in the country, can dismantle any bomb. He has handled more than 1,000 explosives without a single mistake. He has many shortcomings, the biggest of which is that he likes to run naked. Also, he has a history of overdosing. Listen to me, never touch anything he has touched or handed over. Sherlock was completely stunned, especially after hearing this name that was only a few letters different from Voldemort's real name. Sherlock began to doubt his life. For some reason, Sherlock suddenly had a sense of deja vu that Voldemort had retired and ran to a bar to dance striptease. Before Sherlock could say anything, a glass suddenly flew out from the sofa on the other side of the room and hit Tom's head, who was performing rap, squarely, causing the older Tom to fall asleep. Shut up, and you pervert, put on your clothes. As Tom fell to the ground, an irritable female voice came over. This scene happened suddenly, and Sherlock was dumbfounded. He turned his eyes to the direction where the glass flew over and saw a tall woman with a hot body and pigtails sitting on the sofa watching the fuss here. This time, before Sherlock could say anything, Anna took the initiative to introduce them. Lara Crawford and Angelina Jolie, the most powerful sniper in K, codename Twins, a sniper who does not need an observer at all, with obvious shortcomings. This guy's a homosexual and is very interested in married women. After hearing this, Sherlock was speechless. No, it should be said that Wu Yu's mother opened the door for Wu Yu, and Wu Yu was at home. But soon Sherlock found something wrong. Why did this gender change KO thief have two names? As if noticing Sherlock's doubts, Anna tried to calm her blood pressure which had risen rapidly, and then explained to Sherlock. According to her own statement, they are two souls in one body, but according to the report of the psychiatrist of K, Laura is a very rare patient with split personality, and can use two personalities to control one body at the same time, which is why she never uses the observation hand. After listening to Anna's statement, Sherlock was completely dumbfounded. My goodness, this is a path that Sherlock has never imagined in his two lives combined. I have to say, the world is really fucking magical. Sherlock was very surprised and cast his eyes on Laura sitting on the sofa again, but soon, Sherlock found something wrong again, because Laura seemed to be sitting on a person who seemed to be tied up instead of a sofa cushion. Anna seemed to have noticed this situation and rushed up in a hurry to drive Laura away and rescue the person under Laura's buttocks. What Sherlock never expected was that after Anna tore off the tape on this person's mouth, the first sentence this person said would be, "Ah, Anna, my destined person, have you finally come to save me, the hero who will eventually save the whole world?" A strong middle school temperament instantly came out of the mouth of this guy who was wrapped in tape like a mummy. Because of the reason why he was wrapped in tape like a mummy, Sherlock could not even feel the middle school temperament coming at him. You can imagine what this guy would look like if he was free. Just when Sherlock's mouth was twitching unconsciously, Reincarnated, who was following behind Sherlock, took the initiative to come up to Sherlock and introduced him. Bruce Wayne, codename Savior, K's most outstanding pilot. There is nothing that this guy cannot understand, as long as it can be called a vehicle. It's just that one needs a strong heart to operate his vehicle, because the characteristic of this guy's vehicle is that he has to scrap a vehicle every time he drives it. Well, it's the kind of scrapping that reaches the limit of the vehicle. Another thing to note is that this guy is a psychopath. His brain is a little abnormal. He always likes to say some middle school words. Well, he doesn't have a good relationship with Laura. If the two of them are alone, they will always fight, but he is usually the one who gets beaten. Sherlock didn't want to say anything more about this. Anyway, there was one thing Sherlock was sure of, K was indeed K. Normal people couldn't compete with SHIELD back then, so they took another way, to go to the mental hospital to see the case. 6. Chapter 393 Mission Briefing. Sherlock silently gave a thumbs up to this group of guys whose relationships were comparable to those of a kindergarten class. He turned around and saw Anna, who was mediating the relationship like a kindergarten teacher. At this moment, Sherlock finally realized that the reason why Anna came to him was to seek help. No, the main reason why Anna came to him was to find someone who could clean up the mess for these guys. If Anna's introduction was not a lie, then Sherlock was almost certain that if Anna didn't watch over them, it would not be a matter of whether the mission could be completed. It was a matter of whether they could turn a city upside down. After all, if these people were released one by one, it would be no good to the whole society. The reason for finding Sherlock was also very simple. Damn, just relying on the ability of these guys, ordinary people could not suppress them at all. Looking at the whole world, the number of people or forces who were able to stop these guys before they turned the whole city over could be counted on two hands. Before SHIELD was dissolved, there was only SHIELD. Now that SHIELD has been dissolved, the only forces left are the Avengers and Camotage. In terms of individuals, there are even fewer, at most 2.5. Boiled Egg Ancient One counts as 1, Sherlock counts as 1, and the latest Scarlet Witch barely counts as half. Looking at this messy and noisy scene in front of him, Sherlock has begun to have a headache. This is different from what he thought at the beginning. At the beginning, Sherlock heard that there were weirdos and wanted to come here for fun. But when the weirdness of people exceeds a certain level, or when several superstandard weirdos gather together, it is not fun, it is a disaster. At this time, Sherlock has a feeling that things will change over time. I don't know if it's because this naughty kid of mine has been too hard on the Avengers and God can't stand it, and now they are all back for Sherlock, and there are 6 naughty kids like Sherlock at once. In this regard, Sherlock could only sing aloud, "Listen to me, thank you." It turns out that Sherlock's feeling is not wrong at all. Anna spent nearly an hour to appease this group of guys whose interpersonal relationships are comparable to those of a kindergarten class, and began to enter the serious mission briefing. After introducing Sherlock's identity, Anna went straight to the point without any pause. As mentioned earlier, the main reason for this mission is that Anna discovered that a Mayozi arms dealer wanted to sell a miniaturized nuclear bomb in Las Vegas. Although the size of the nuclear bomb is not very large, its power can definitely flatten an entire city. But the problem is here. Anna only knows that the underground arms dealer named Anton wants to sell nuclear bombs here, but she doesn't know what the nuclear bomb looks like, who the buyer is, and when the transaction will be made. It is precisely because of this that this mission was created, and this group of weirdos gathered together. But the good news is that, although Anton is a pure Mayozi, he is also a playful and arrogant character, and it happens that Anton's business can still support his arrogance and love of play. After all, there will be no poor people in a business that is related to arms. According to Anna's intelligence, Anton will arrive in Las Vegas in 3 days and hold a grand private party. Anna suspects that Anton will sell the nuclear bomb he brought during the party. Therefore, their main task is to sneak into the party and monitor Anton to ensure that they can catch Anton and the buyer at the same time and seize the nuclear bomb. Anna's arrangement is very simple. She and the relatively reliable Brad and Ryan had disguised themselves as waiters and partygoers to sneak in and find a way to get close to Anton. The sniper Laura is responsible for support and vision. The pilot Bruce is on standby to provide firepower support at any time, and Harley Quinn is responsible for monitoring all digital equipment on the scene and providing some technical support. As for the bomb disposal expert Tom, who likes to run naked, now wears only a pair of shorts and a tie under an Iron Fist education, and looks as perverted as Fleck in One Piece. He is responsible for the safety of the nuclear bomb after seizing it to ensure that the nuclear bomb will not explode. As for Sherlock, well, according to Anna, Sherlock is a mobile support. To put it simply, he should go to support wherever there is a problem. In short, he should wipe the ass. But if everything goes well, Sherlock doesn't need to appear. After arranging the tasks, Sherlock gave Anna a look that "we need to talk in private." After making sure that Anna understood what he meant, he took off the pendant Harley Quinn hanging on him for the 8th time and threw it on the sofa, and then walked out of the door. After saying some precautions, Anna announced the disbandment and then threw Harley Quinn, who was angry, and pounced on her on the sofa, and then followed Sherlock to the outside of the room. Seeing Anna come out, Sherlock's face darkened. "Good man, do you need help? You need someone to wipe your ass." But before Sherlock could speak, Anna quickly put her hands together and began to apologize to Sherlock with a pitiful expression and a voice. I'm sorry, this time it's my fault. You've seen what these guys look like. I'm really afraid that I can't control them. Please help me, please help me." Seeing Anna begging for forgiveness in front of his goddess Anne Hathaway's face, Sherlock, as an LS, finally softened his heart and sighed helplessly. After thinking for a long time, Sherlock looked at Anna seriously and asked a soul-searching question that he had wanted to ask for a long time. "Anna, tell me honestly, with this group of weirdos together, do you really have the ability to suppress them?" Hearing Sherlock's question, Anna was obviously stunned for a moment, and then after a while, Anna sighed helplessly and explained to Sherlock, "No, you're overthinking it. Not to mention even S.H.I.E.L.D. would probably be in trouble. So under normal circumstances, these people would never be allowed to get together. Reinhardt and Brad are members of the Black Ops team, Laura is a killer in the Treadstone project, and Holly, Bruce, and Tom are all trump cards in their respective departments, and will not be used easily. It's just that this time it was really bad luck. It happened to coincide with K's internal review, and the mission on this side was very urgent. Coincidentally, these few people were not suspected at all, so under a series of coincidences, this group of living dads got together. Chapter 394, Daily Drama in 3 Days. After listening to Anna's words, Sherlock thought about it and expressed his understanding. Anna was right. With the strange personalities of these people, they were definitely not from Hydra. After all, Hydra was just ambitious and did things that were not human, but they were not stupid at all. It was true that they liked to absorb talents, but compared to this group of strange guys who were not human, Hydra still preferred those normal talents. After all, according to the strange personalities of these people, they were powerful, but also had obvious shortcomings in their personalities. I dare not say anything else. Just take Harley Quinn as an example. If she was absorbed into Hydra, as long as there was a handsome guy who dared to take risks and firmly hold Holly's heart, and then marry Holly, do you believe that Harley could turn against him and become the spy of that handsome guy? After all, this character who was exactly the same as Harley Quinn, as long as the Joker was found, what would it be like? The movie has already made it clear. In the end, Sherlock could only sigh silently, accept the reality in front of him, and try to suppress his blood pressure and try to get in touch with this group of weirdos. After all, there are still 3 days before the mission starts. In these 3 days, to be honest, as long as you don't mess with this group of weirdos, there is actually a lot of fun. Let's talk about Tom Yodel, who is similar to Fleck. God knows why this old pervert who looks more than 60 years old is so popular in Las Vegas. For 3 whole days, this guy was either sleeping or running out to attend parties in a pair of shorts and a tie. But every time he goes to a party, he can bring back a group of young and beautiful girls. If Anna hadn't been watching in this room, God knows what kind of ghost this old pervert would make. As for the pilot, who has the same name as Batman, but is likely to be regarded as a black spot in Batman's life, well, this guy is the most fun. That guy is in the late stage of the second-year disease. Sherlock likes to tease this guy the most. After all, as long as you follow this guy's second-year brain circuit, you will be surprised to find that this guy is extremely fun. Especially when one day, Sherlock took out the lightsaber he found in the universe in front of this guy, and secretly used magic to disguise himself as the Force. After this guy barely showed a skill of throwing a lightsaber and returning it, this middle school version of Batman almost knelt down and called Sherlock his godfather. Since that day, Bruce has regarded Sherlock as the god in his life. As long as Sherlock drives this guy with the reason of teaching him the Force, this guy will be more obedient than a well-trained military dog. He even ignored Anna at one point and regarded Sherlock as a real god. When Anna looked at Sherlock, the contempt in her eyes was undisguised, and she had an expression of "is it fun to tease a fool?" But every time Sherlock said, "It's interesting, super interesting." After all, which boy didn't fantasize about becoming someone else's king when he was a child? Sherlock never thought that he would experience this feeling with Bruce, this weirdo. If you want to talk about when Sherlock turned back to normal, it was once when Sherlock asked this guy to drive him out for a ride. After coming back, Sherlock never wanted to talk to this guy again. At the same time, Sherlock also understood why Ryan had told him that it takes a big heart to ride this guy's vehicle. Is this called driving? That's just flying too low. This is the result of Sherlock's suppression by relying on his prestige in Bruce. Otherwise Sherlock would have experienced what is called the real version of GTA driving. As for the rest, there is nothing to say. Reinhardt is still as hot as ever. God knows where this black man who pretends to be like an iron tower bought so many skirts that fit his figure. In just 3 days, Sherlock almost saw this guy wearing all the types of skirts that Sherlock knew, and even when he was sorting out the combat uniform, Sherlock secretly took a look. Just one look and Sherlock was dumbfounded. Do you know what a tactical Scottish combat skirt is? Sherlock didn't know before, but through Reinhardt, Sherlock knew. As for Brad, who is Reinhardt's teammate, well, Sherlock didn't dare to provoke Brad during these 3 days. No, it should be said that no one dared to provoke Brad. For 3 whole days, Brad's face was as black as the bottom of his mother's pot. As for the reason, it was very simple. Brad's wife agreed to let his daughter and her classmates go on a trip together. The destination of the trip was Las Vegas. Of course, this was only a small part of the reason. The real reason why Brad wanted to kill was that there was a guy named Charles in this tour group. God knows what it feels like to watch Brad sitting on the sofa with a black face and maintaining the weapon in his hand every day. Sherlock even dared to swear that if this unlucky guy named Charles appeared in front of Brad would definitely let this guy experience what the 10 tortures of the King Dynasty are. As for the remaining 2 women, well, let's talk about Laura first, or Angelina. After all, she is an extremely special schizophrenia that can control the body at the same time, and Sherlock is still very interested. After 3 days of observation, Sherlock knew why Laura didn't need an observer, because her 2 personalities could control half of her body. To be honest, Sherlock was dumbfounded when he saw this scene. After all, if you see a person holding chopsticks in both hands at the dinner table, eating their own food without any fight, and even chatting and laughing with everyone at the same time, you will be dumbfounded and sigh at the diversity of species and the magic of nature. However, after 3 days of contact, Sherlock can barely tell the difference between Laura and Angelina. Laura's voice is crisp, while Angelina's voice is a very contrasting smoky voice. Sherlock couldn't figure out why the same voice could make 2 completely unrelated sounds, and the switch was so natural. As for Holly, well, Holly can be said to be Sherlock's most troublesome person. After all, he has to be on guard against Harley's sneak attacks or sneak shots all the time. This guy even reached a desperate level. Sherlock has now developed a habit of using magic to check if there is anything eavesdropping or secretly filming before going to bed, taking a shower, or going to the toilet. Then he must lock the door every time he goes to the toilet or goes to bed, and he must use magic to reinforce it twice. At the same time, if there are windows, they must also be locked and reinforced, and they must be covered. After all, if you don't pay attention, this guy really dares to pounce on Sherlock. As for the normal daytime, well, Sherlock has almost gotten used to the feeling of having an extra pendant on him. Chapter 395 mission begins. Facts have proved that those who can get to the top of the industry, even if they have a weird personality, are not all idiots. They can be any kind of person in normal times, but when it comes to real fighting, none of them are unreliable. Anna led Brad and Reincarnated to get into Anton's party with almost no effort. There are roughly 2 types of parties in Eagle Source, which are essentially not much different from domestic nightclubs and discos. One is the way to play without money. The host of the party will send someone to stand at the door and collect a certain amount of money according to the head, but once you enter the party, there will be no other consumption. The other is the way of playing for the rich. As the host, no head fee is charged for the people who attend the party. Although there are also doormen, this kind of doorman is more symbolic. As long as you are old enough and dressed properly, you will generally be allowed in. Of course, this does not mean that people like Anton will not have security work. In the VIP seats of the party, especially near Anton, there are definitely several bodyguards wearing suits who do not attend the party. And no one knows if there are any of Anton's men among the people reveling on the other side. As for why Anton, who is a Russian, can hold such a large-scale party in the Eagle Source, it is actually very simple. Anton, who is not short of money, directly found a party company to handle all matters of the party. The remaining men and women who participated in Anton's party and acted as the atmosphere group were even simpler. Anyway, Anton was rich and didn't care about one more or one less. Under the atmosphere of entertainment to death in the Eagle Source, it is easy to gather a room of people to attend the party by just finding a few party wanderers. Anna and the other 2 got in that way. When Anna and the other 2 got in, the whole team began to quickly arrange their duties according to the plan around Anna and the other 2, except Sherlock and Tom, who was responsible for bomb disposal. Tom can be said to have refreshed everyone's cognition. In line with the idea that I didn't need to take action at the beginning, this guy who absolutely had a common language with Frank wore a pair of underwear and a tie and got into Anton's party just like Anna and the other 2. By the time Anna found this guy, he looked even more like he was here to attend Anton's pool party than Anna and the other 2. Poor Anna and the other 2 carefully observed the surrounding environment throughout the whole process. In order to better perform their tasks, they didn't even dare to touch the food and drinks at the party. But look at Uncle Tom, holding a cigarette in his left hand and a bottle of wine in his right hand, smiling brightly as he hugged 2 girls. If you don't know him, you would think he is the host of the party. After a long time of psychological preparation, Anna ordered to ignore Tom. After all, Tom was really not needed before the nuclear bomb was confirmed. As for Sherlock, well, to be honest, Sherlock was not interested in such a party where no one knew him. Compared with a crazy party, Sherlock wanted to enter the hotel, to visit the local characteristics. Of course, it was impossible to play. Sherlock, was mortal enemies with gambling and drugs, and Sherlock himself was not very interested in this thing, and he didn't have the energy to learn those rules. That sounded very brain burning. The main reason why he wanted to visit was that he had never seen such a place in his 2 lifetimes, and the other reason was the Hong Kong movies that Sherlock had watched when he was a child before he traveled through time. I'm not bragging. Who hasn't watched those movies made by Chow Yun-fat, Andy Lau, and Stephen Chow when he was a child? Sherlock even remembers Mark, who had a big back hair, a formal suit, a big windbreaker, a white scarf, and a match in his mouth. At that time, the young Sherlock even thought that this was the most handsome outfit in the world. So when he really arrived in Las Vegas, Sherlock's first reaction was to see if there was anyone like Mark in it. But unfortunately, Sherlock's plan failed before the action even started, because Sherlock overlooked a very important factor, his pendant, Harley Quinn. Before the mission started, and Anna and the other 2 hadn't mixed in, Harley dragged Sherlock to accompany her in the technical support van, and Sherlock certainly disagreed. But since Harley was almost threatening to die, Sherlock finally decided to send Harley to the car, and then go to broaden his horizons. But when Harley opened the door of the car, Sherlock's dissatisfaction and the idea of broadening his horizons immediately disappeared without a trace. The reason was simple. Sherlock saw something that he couldn't refuse at all. 2 computers with super luxurious 6-screen configurations. No man can refuse such a supercomputer. Sherlock decisively gave up his plan and ran to the car to observe the computer case. It doesn't matter if he doesn't look at it. After a closer look, Sherlock exclaimed, "A case of customized hardware. And there are 3 unreleased end cards on it that can achieve parallel crossfire and have good performance. Damn it, I knew that Huang Laoxi, the old thief, must have kept it privately. Now look, the netizens in my previous life were not deceiving me." Of course, Sherlock's surprise is far from over. When Sherlock turned on the computer, Sherlock was so happy that he almost fainted. You have to know that the network here in the Eagle Source, especially the home network, how can I say it? It can only be said to be usable, and some places can't even keep up with the network conditions in rural areas of China. But look at the network in this car. I don't know what privileges or black technology K used, but it can reach 20G/s for both upstream and downstream. Note that it is 20'G, not 20'M. Do you know what 20G means? It's a 200G game. As long as your hard disk reads and writes fast enough, it only takes 10 seconds to download it. Damn, which man can refuse such a silky internet speed like Dove? Anyway, Sherlock can't do it. Even Harley was very considerate to prepare a special keyboard, mouse, and even an Xbox Elite controller for Sherlock. What else can she say? Sherlock didn't say anything and sat back to back with Holly. Harley was busy with technical support on her side, and Sherlock decisively started playing his own game. Genshin Impact. Escape from Tarkov. Start. When Sherlock actually opened the game, he felt like he was about to be sublimated. Do you know what it means to have full special effects and full ray tracing? Do you know what it means to have a 0 ms delay? Even the cute little Harley took the time to spend 5 minutes to help Sherlock optimize the game materials. As for the mission, what the hell is the mission? A bunch of elites need my help? Now my mission is to bring a big purple bag and a fully equipped act to defeat all the guys on the map, and then retreat to my safe house with a lot of loot. Chapter 396K Simple and rough task process. In fact, according to the laws of the United States, organizations like K do not have the power to enforce the law in the country. Logically speaking, situations like Anton should be transferred to Phobble. But unfortunately, K and Phobble have always been at odds. In Phobble's view, K is a group of lawless lunatics, and in K's view, Phobble is a group of police officers who deal with robbery and kidnapping cases. In short, the two sides can't stand each other, and slowly a strange tacit understanding is formed, that is, for domestic tasks, no matter who has the power to enforce the law and who doesn't, whoever discovers it first will get the task. And Anna is the lucky one who discovered it first. It must be said that compared with the Avengers, the tasks performed by Kay in the Marvel world are even similar to those of the police in Sherlock's view. The three of them wandered around the party for a long time before they saw the target of this operation, Anton, appear. Anna just pretended to be a hidden waiter at the party and successfully approached Anton without even arousing anyone's suspicion. Relying on Anna's beautiful face, which is as beautiful as Anne Hathaway's, Anna even took the opportunity of exchanging phone numbers to install a Trojan program made by Harley in Anton's mobile phone. Yes, everything looks like this, and there is a little rationality in the nonsense. Of course, it cannot be said that there is no crisis at all, but it can only be said that there is, but not much. The cause of the incident was that Harley monitored an intrusion in the circuit pipeline of the hotel and then started a countdown device, and Anton happened to show up at this time. Everyone had a series of discussions and a communication about whether to kill Anton on the spot. In the end, under Anna's tough attitude, they gave up the idea of directly killing Anton, and it turned out that the so-called countdown was actually just the two party leaders secretly starting the stage flame special effects prohibited by the hotel. The subsequent actions can be said to be extremely smooth. After Anna returned the phone to Anton, she happened to hear Anton's men reporting to Anton that the transaction was about to begin. Anna immediately asked the helicopter to take off and the fighters to be ready, and the action method arranged by Anna is also very consistent with the simple and crude means of the American style. They used the heavy firepower of the helicopter to clear the trading site and then took advantage of the chaos to rush in and harvest. After dealing with all the armed personnel, they finally found Anton and a suitcase-sized nuclear bomb that had been activated in the bedroom. Then Tom, whose underwear had disappeared, appeared at the door of the room like a savior with whiskey in one hand and a screwdriver in the other. With headphones, accompanied by the high-pitched Bach symphony in the headphones, and the excited and nervous shouts of Anna, Brad and Ryan had in reality, he calmly lifted the countdown of the bomb. Everything was so smooth, and it even felt unrealistic. As for Sherlock, you may not believe it. Sherlock listened to the communication in the headphones and gained weight for 2 waves, but couldn't find the place where he appeared. After that, the logistics team naturally entered the scene, taking away what should be taken away, sealing what should be sealed, interrogating what should be interrogated, and dismantling what should be dismantled. To be honest, the rest of the matter has nothing to do with Anna and her team. After all, the rest of the interrogation or detention is not something Anna can control. Compared with Fobo, Kay has another convenience, that is, Kay's prisoners do not need to be tried. Of course, after all, Kay is particularly wealthy compared to Fobo. Field members like Anna will receive a bounty for relaxation after each operation. Generally speaking, the members of the team will divide the bounty equally, and then everyone will go back to their own homes. But this time it is obviously not the case. After all, everyone is in Las Vegas, a crazy entertainment city. If they don't experience it, it will be a bit too wasteful to go back directly. So these weirdos directly bypassed Anna and Sherlock and Harley, who was clinging to Sherlock, and decided immediately to learn from Anton and have a pool party. Based on the principle of minority obeys majority, Anna and Harley's objections have no effect at all. What? Sherlock? Sherlock is not a K person. It doesn't matter at all. Thus, a grand party appeared under the instigation of Laura, Reinhardt and Bruce. When Sherlock ran out to see the characteristics of Las Vegas and was about to return to the room disappointed, Sherlock was completely dumbfounded. The room was full of men and women twisting wildly to the music, and there was even a donkey that came from nowhere holding a bottle of beer and showing everyone what it meant to show off. Sherlock didn't know anyone in the room. If it weren't for Harley, who found Sherlock at the first time and rushed towards Sherlock, Sherlock almost thought he had walked into the wrong place. After Sherlock pulled Holly, who had drunk a lot of alcohol, off his body, he carefully began to walk into the party. Well, it can't be said that it was not crazy. It can only be said that it was a group of demons dancing wildly. Sherlock saw that Laura, The thief was hugging a bride who came from nowhere to hold a bachelor party and kissing her passionately. Reincarnated was also wearing her own little skirt and holding a heavily made up girl in her arms. Sherlock didn't know what it was, and she was talking passionately. Looking at that figure, it was probably a man, right? Tom was as stable as ever, still holding a swimsuit beauty in each hand, and he was no longer so happy when smoking and drinking. But the pilot Bruce was very unexpected to Sherlock. At this time, Bruce didn't know whether he drank too much or ate something he shouldn't eat. He was competing with Anna in a small ring. But even if Bruce thought he was the savior, the second-year disease was still the second-year disease. It was undoubtedly a foolish dream for a player driving a vehicle to beat Anna, an agent who had been on a long-term field mission. So when Sherlock saw this scene, Bruce had been beaten by Anna for several times, and his face was swollen like a pig's head. However, the second-year disease still has some advantages. Bruce also inherited the indomitable character of the saviors in the animation, and stood up again and again to challenge Anna's force. Anna gradually lost herself in the cheers of the people around her. She was not angry, but happily used this poor middle school student as a punching bag, and had a lot of fun beating him. The only normal person in the whole venue was Brad Pitt, a weathered old man. At this time, Brad was holding a phone and talking on the phone while eating a mouthful of fried mushrooms and a mouthful of wine. After seeing Sherlock, he greeted Sherlock and pushed the pot of fried mushrooms towards Sherlock, indicating that Sherlock should try it. Sherlock took a bite, and you know what? It was the first time in his 2 lives that Sherlock had eaten such delicious fried mushrooms. Chapter 397. It's over. I've come into contact with the real world. Actually, it's not Sherlock's fault that he has little experience. In his 2 lifetimes, Sherlock has never been to in province, which is known as the paradise of mushrooms. Naturally, he doesn't know how delicious the mushrooms that can make people in an entire province addicted are. So now that he ate this unknown mushroom for the first time, Sherlock couldn't help but eat a few more bites out of greed. But after all, this thing is fried and very oily, and Sherlock can't eat too much. But as he ate, Sherlock felt that the surrounding environment was a little wrong. First of all, it was the music that sounded quite loud to Sherlock. I don't know why. After eating mushrooms for a while, Sherlock unexpectedly began to feel that this music was much more pleasant to the ear. He took the time to look up at the direction of the DJ station. Oh, it turned out that someone had changed. I thought the original DJ was not good at all. Look at how good the music the current DJ plays, and the appearance is also very handsome, but I don't know why he looks a bit like Madara from the Laughing Five Heroes in Naruto. Don't say it, don't say it. The more you look at it, the more it looks like him. In addition to the different clothes, the appearance and expression can be said to be more and more similar. Good man. God knows that I just traveled through time, but I can actually enjoy the happiness of Madara being my DJ. Look at how neatly those Ultraman and little monsters are jumping around the DJ station. You know, on TV, these 2 sides are always fighting to the death. Are you looking at Madara's red glowing and rotating Sharingan? Wait a minute. Sharingan? Sherlock immediately realized that something was wrong. Isn't this the Marvel world? Where did the Sharingan and Uchiha Madara come from? Just when Sherlock was still in a daze, a short-haired woman with a fragrant body suddenly pounced on Sherlock. After so many days of training with Harley, Sherlock directly pulled the woman hanging on him off from his body. Looking closely at the face of the woman who was pulled off from his body, Sherlock was shocked at the time. Good man, Teacher Miho Fuka. Damn. I actually saw the former hard drive goddess Miho Fuka in the Marvel world. Damn. This is not an illusion. Teacher Miho actually spoke to him, and it was in English. I don't know why, but this voice sounds exactly like Harry's. And the most amazing thing is that what Teacher Miho said was very considerate and subtitled in Chinese. HMM. Wait. Chinese subtitles. Shit. Honey, what's wrong with you? Why are you looking at me like that? The night sky became like a Van Gogh painting. The only difference was that the moon in the sky turned into a big funny face. Not only that, Sherlock even saw some little people with wings slowly appearing in the distorted stars above the sky. Wait. Calm down and think carefully about what happened. You know, this was the absolute king of Sherlock's collection in his hard drive in his previous life. The teachers at 395 and Ebed 817 were all impressive and unforgettable. Just when Sherlock was sighing with a question mark on his forehead, teacher Miyotoshin actually spoke to him. Sherlock let go of the teacher he was holding in his hand and ran outside to observe. It didn't matter what he saw, but after watching it, Sherlock was completely dumbfounded. While trying to comfort himself, Sherlock patted his cheeks with both hands and began to recall what happened. Sherlock was sure that he was normal before entering this room. The sky was just an ordinary night sky. He didn't drink alcohol the whole time, so there was no possibility that he was drunk or drugged. The only thing he ate was the mushrooms that Brad shared. Wait. Mushrooms? Damn it. Who the hell made poisonous mushrooms into fried mushrooms? Sherlock's already confused brain suddenly recalled the news that the rabbits in Yun province saw the villain in the hospital every year before the time travel, and it was even ridiculed by netizens as a series of memes such as Super VR Simulator and Real World in Trance. At this moment, even if Sherlock was stupid, he knew that he was definitely poisoned by mushrooms. He wanted to get a bottle of antidote from the exchange machine in his library without any hesitation. Sherlock was lucky. In order to exchange it for Tony, Sherlock placed the antidote in a very front position. With just a simple operation, a flask of antidote appeared in Sherlock's hand. At that moment, for the sake of his own life, Sherlock did not hesitate to open the seal of the bottle and directly poured a whole bottle of antidote into it. To be honest, because of the desire to survive, Sherlock did not react to what the potion tasted like when he was pouring the potion. After Sherlock finished pouring the potion and everything around him returned to normal, the dead smell of the antidote came up along Sherlock's esophagus. Well, how to describe that strange taste? It was like a 10-year-old dry toilet that had never been taken care of, and in the middle of summer, someone had evenly touched a can of herring and then covered it with a straw mat that had been soaked with sweat countless times. Others didn't know, but Sherlock couldn't stand the smell, and he immediately began to retch continuously. Because of the constant retching of the smell, Sherlock finally began to vomit, as if he was really going to vomit. So, Sherlock, who had just experienced the mushroom crisis, had to cover his mouth with both hands and rushed to the toilet. As we all know, some human instincts are difficult to stop by willpower, such as diarrhea or the desire to vomit. Even if Sherlock is a very powerful magician, it is still the same. Halfway through the run, Sherlock found that he seemed to be unable to reach the toilet. In a hurry, Sherlock's CPU was running so fast that it was almost smoking, and he suddenly came up with a solution that was not a solution. Seeing a guy wearing a helmet and cosplaying as a Spartan on the road ahead, Sherlock pulled off the guy's helmet without any hesitation, and then held the guy's helmet and began to vomit rainbows. After a full half hour, Sherlock finally vomited all the poisonous mushrooms he had just eaten with the help of the antidote. During this time, Harley ran to Sherlock with a concerned look on her face to help Sherlock pat his back, and even found a big iron bucket for Sherlock. After seeing that Sherlock got a little better, Harley moved Sherlock to a sofa with relatively fewer people. Sherlock, who was holding the iron bucket, was not feeling well. His whole style was different from others, and it looked as if he had not been colored. At the same time, a question appeared in Sherlock's mind. Fuck you, how did Tony you drink this stuff like water, you? Chapter 398. IQ has dropped significantly. 10 minutes had passed since Sherlock was helped to sit down by Harry, and the nausea that made Sherlock nauseous gradually disappeared. Sherlock slowly recovered, and after cleaning himself up with the water Harry handed over, Sherlock remembered that he had just drunk a potion. Since he drank a potion, there must be an entry that would appear on Sherlock. Based on his awareness that he was a non-African, Sherlock would never believe that the entry he randomly got would be a good one. Thinking of this, Sherlock hurriedly wanted to check his entry. It didn't matter if he didn't check it, but when he did, Sherlock's face turned green. Obtained entry, brain replacement, entry effect. Do you feel that as you age, your brain becomes less and less useful, like a rusty machine? Whenever you want to do something or remember something, you always feel that there is a thick fog covering your brain. Now, no need to worry. Brain replacement is here. It can help you organize your brain, painlessly remove the original waste brain, and grow a qualified, healthy, and unused new brain. Of course, there are still certain small risks during this period. IQ will be greatly reduced, so it is recommended that someone be nearby to take care of you when replacing the new brain. Entry time: 23 hours, 20 minutes and 50 seconds. Looking at this description, that is more like a fake medicine advertisement broadcast on a small TV station than an entry effect. Sherlock was directly broken. At the moment the halo was activated, Sherlock suddenly felt as if he was very happy, and the whole person became a little stupid. Sherlock didn't even have time to finish cursing before the intelligence reducing halo was activated. After careful probing, he found that Sherlock had really changed. He immediately became playful and put on the same smirk as Harley Quinn. To be honest, if there was a system elf or something that gave him random entries in front of Sherlock, Sherlock would definitely put the iron bucket he was holding on the other person's head without hesitation. Damn brain replacement. Is this a brain problem? Isn't this a complete aura of reduced intelligence? When Sherlock, who was furious, figured out the essence of his entry, he started cursing. I don't know about other things, but it was the first time that Harley Quinn, who was sitting next to Sherlock and taking care of him, saw Sherlock with such a silly expression. Fuck at %, and %# at %. What the fuck? Hey, I suddenly feel so happy the party of K's team was in full swing, but on the other side, a K base not far from Las Vegas was much quieter. Rather than saying that this is a base, it is better to say that this is a comprehensive service system of K. It has a series of functions such as base black prison and logistics support. It is a place that does not exist on the map at all. After Anton was captured by Anna's team, he was sent here along with the suitcase-sized nuclear bomb. Anton, the buyer, and those who are still alive. The living will be judged here, or directly become bargaining chips for a series of shady operations. As for the nuclear bomb, it is a simple nuclear bomb, but it will be dismantled and harmlessly treated. At this time, in a room similar to a laboratory in this base, 2 staff members in protective clothing were hiding in a small room operating a mechanical arm to prepare to harmlessly treat the nuclear bomb, commonly known as breaking it into pieces. Of course, after all, this thing is a nuclear bomb, so it is definitely impossible to deal with it violently. It can only be dismantled carefully. At the beginning, everything was normal. After opening the box, the radiation alarm in the workshop began to alarm all the time. However, when the 2 carefully removed the cover on the box, things suddenly became wrong. Because with the opening of the cover, the value on the Geiger counter next to it began to decay rapidly, and even after 5 minutes, it became only slightly stronger than the natural environment outside. It is no exaggeration to say that according to the radiation value displayed on the Geiger counter now, even without protective clothing, the safety of people close to the nuclear bomb can be guaranteed. But this is obviously not in line with common sense. Nuclear bombs, the more they are dismantled, the greater the radiation. When the real reaction core, that is, the radioactive material, is dismantled, the radiation should have exploded long ago. How could it be that the radiation is getting smaller as it is dismantled? The 2 staff members quickly noticed something was wrong. At first, they thought that the Geiger counter inside the workshop had malfunctioned. However, when one of the braver staff members took a new Geiger counter and approached the nuclear bomb and still did not alarm, they both knew that this time the fun was big. At that moment, the 2 of them reported the situation to their superiors without any hesitation. At the same time, in Langley, the headquarters of K, Director K, who had just resolved the nuclear bomb crisis, also put down the burden in his heart and was preparing to pack up and go home. After all, he still had to face an extremely complex internal review tomorrow. The strict internal review even made the director feel that he was beginning to envy Anna, who was performing field work outside. Damn Nick Fury, damn SHIELD, damn Hydra. The director couldn't help but curse in a low voice after enduring for a long time. However, before our director walked out of the office building, a staff member hurriedly stopped the director, who wanted to go home with a stack of documents. The director, who was a little unhappy at first, turned into a deep fear after seeing the report about the nuclear crisis handed over by his subordinates. He instinctively realized that something was wrong. Sure enough, before he finished reading the document, the director's cell phone rang. Looking at the caller ID, the director's heart skipped a beat. The reason was very simple. According to the caller ID, the call was from the White House. The director did not hesitate too much and directly answered the phone in his hand. As expected, the moment the phone was answered, the roar of the bastard and incompetent president came from the other side. In a pile of nonsense, the director quickly grasped the key point. He didn't care about getting off work and started running madly to his office. As for the reason, it was very simple. Just now, the White House received a recording, and the content of the recording was about Anton, the arms dealer they had just captured. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 399, Chaotic Team, Part 1. The director opened the recording sent by the White House with trembling hands. The content of the recording was very simple. According to the original words of the recording, I believe you have found something wrong. Yes, the nuclear bomb you took away is not a real nuclear bomb. The real nuclear bomb is still in our hands. Our request is very simple. You must release Anton and let us leave Eagle Source safely. Otherwise the whole Las Vegas will be buried with Anton. You only have 24 hours. I hope your stupid brain can make the right decision. To be honest, the director's head was buzzing after listening to this recording, and he forwarded this recording to Anna, who was at the party. As for what Anna was doing, well, our old spy Mizina was still on the small stage to deal with Mr. Bruce, the pilot who never gave up. Just after Anna threw Bruce, the unlucky point, to the ground for the nth time, the director's forwarding came to Anna's mobile phone. Under the reminder of the special ringtone, Anna almost subconsciously took the mobile phone out of her trouser pocket. After seeing the contact above, Anna was also stunned for a moment. Before Anna could react, Bruce, who didn't know what to send, took advantage of Anna's daze and hugged Anna's waist and gave her a barbarian attack. FXXK. Wait a minute. FXXK. Seabull. Unprepared, Anna was directly taken flying by Bruce's barbarian attack, and then both of them fell into the back of the small ring. Fortunately, Anna's mobile phone has a waterproof function, otherwise the fun tonight would be really big. Anna stood up from the swimming pool a little irritably and gave Bruce, who was in the process of winning the settlement, a slap in the face. Then she turned her eyes to her mobile phone to see what happened. It doesn't matter if she doesn't look at it. The more Anna looks at it, the darker her face becomes. In the end, she simply stopped turning around, grabbed Bruce's collar with her backhand, and pulled Bruce, who had been beaten up, out of the pool. Anna didn't care about her soaked clothes. She jumped out of the pool and rushed to the DJ booth. In the process, she didn't forget to pull up Laura, who was lying on the bride-to-be, who was having a bachelorette party. After all, it was still early, and they could catch another party. In the crazy city of Las Vegas, there was no shortage of rich people and crazy parties. After Anna paused the party's exciting music and picked up the microphone to indicate that the party was over, the partygoers cried out in grief, but they still left one after another. Laura, who was interrupted, was about to get angry when she saw Anna's face as black as the bottom of a pot. She knew that something was wrong and didn't care about her hobby. She followed Anna and started to drive the people at the party. After all the irrelevant people left, Anna nodded to her teammates, including the sniper Laura, who had drunk a lot of alcohol, the pilot Bruce, who had a bruised face, and Harley, who had just hurried over to help. Except for these three people, the rest of the people didn't show up. Anna became irritable and turned to look at Harley, who was still normal. "Harley, where are the others?" Harley didn't hesitate and told Anna where Sherlock and Brad were. When Anna and her group rushed to the living room, the first thing she saw was Sherlock, who was sitting on the sofa holding an iron bucket with a smirk on his face and disheveled. Anna couldn't imagine that the bad Sherlock would show such a smirk. He looked like he had a low IQ. Seeing Sherlock, who was obviously not in a good state, Anna didn't care about anything else and quickly pulled Harley to ask what happened. Harley looked at Anna, whose Face was as black as the bottom of a pot and didn't dare to hide anything. She began to tell Anna what she knew. According to Holly, when she saw Sherlock and Brad eating the fried mushrooms on the table in the kitchen. Then she wanted to hang on Sherlock as usual, but was pulled down by Sherlock all of a sudden, and then Sherlock's face began to change wildly. She threw herself away and rushed to the swimming pool outside. After arriving outside, Holly saw Sherlock's face was extremely ugly. Then, with a flick of her wrist, a bottle of something unknown appeared in Sherlock's hand. Sherlock began to vomit crazily after drinking the liquid. Holly also hurried to help. Just after helping Sherlock to the sofa, Sherlock became like this. Listening to Holly's explanation, Anna felt that her blood pressure began to rise with Holly's narration. You know, Sherlock was a big hand that Anna had invited at the cost of her old face. Now this big hand that could handle the trouble was ineffective. Anna felt that she was definitely in Mercury retrograde. As for why Sherlock was like this, Anna could guess a little. After all, although Anna rarely met Sherlock as a friend, Anna would mail a local specialty to Sherlock every time she went on a mission, and Sherlock often returned the gift. Among them are potions with outstanding effects, but the side effects are hard to describe. Anna herself has used them, and the effects are really good, the kind that can save lives, but the side effects are really inhumane. As for why Sherlock drank the potion, Anna also had some guesses of her own, and immediately led people to rush to the kitchen. As Anna expected, in the kitchen, everyone saw Brad dancing with the heir. Seeing Brad dancing with the heir with an intoxicated look on his face, Anna's face became darker and darker. She asked Laura and Bruce to hold Brad down and induce vomiting on this damn thing. As for herself, she came to the pot of fried mushrooms that was the culprit, gently picked up a bunch of mushrooms, and observed them carefully, and then Anna became irritable. Fuck. Where is Tom? I've already said that this time he is not allowed to bring his damn poisonous mushrooms. Where is he? I'm going to tear him apart. With Anna's roar, the faces of the teammates who followed Anna suddenly changed. They were originally treating Brad, Laura and Bruce gently, but now their actions became rough. You know, Tom's mushrooms are famous in the whole K, and they even caused chaos in the entire logistics department. But if Tom's skills were not strong, K would still need Tom. Just based on Tom's love for poisonous mushrooms, he should have stayed in one of K's black prisons and never see the sun. Chapter 400, Chaotic Team, Part 2. Everyone finally found the culprit Tom, but when they found Tom, he was already unconscious with his head in the toilet. Harley and Laura tried countless ways to wake up Tom, who was already in a coma, but they couldn't. In the end, Anna could only grit her teeth and order to throw Tom aside and go find the missing Reincarnated first. However, after searching all the corners of all the rooms, they couldn't find Reincarnated, and even Reincarnated's cell phone couldn't be reached. Among all the rooms, only Anna's room was left. In the end, everyone could only follow behind Anna and watch Anna slowly open the door of her room. After the door opened, everyone saw the scene in the room and immediately whistled. Among these whistles, there were Reinhardt's screams of fear and Anna's angry roars. Reinhardt, I give you 30 seconds. Put on your clothes and throw the thing next to you off my bed. The party is over. After a lot of chaos, Anna's team finally managed to snipe in the messy living room, but everyone was not in a good condition. Sherlock became stupid and looked like a fool. Anna was soaking wet. Bruce was also soaking wet and bruised. Reinhardt wore normal clothes because of guilt. Laura was drunk. Brad was sometimes sober and sometimes hallucinated, and Tom was unconscious. Looking at the whole scene, only Harley, who was focused on Sherlock, was relatively normal. Anna took a deep breath for a long time before she could barely suppress her rising blood pressure and clicked on the voice forwarded by the director. Oh my god, the joint video conference between the director and the White House. After listening to the voice, everyone who was still sober realized the seriousness of the matter. They were fooled. 30 seconds later, everyone named by Anna had gathered neatly in Anna's room. After Anna closed the door and used it as a background, she put on a standard smile and opened the video call. Compared with the mess on her side, the other side of the screen was undoubtedly much more normal. The director and the White House staff were sitting in a serious office in neat suits. Anna took a look at the messy environment around her and immediately began to give orders to her team. Even everyone felt like opening champagne at halftime. It can be said that they were played around by Anton. Just as Anna was thinking about how to respond to her old director, Anna's phone rang with a video call ringtone at this time. Anna, who glanced at the screen, almost immediately made a sharp explosion. After saying that, Anna rushed to her room first and did not forget to tie up her wet hair on the way. She also took Sherlock's coat and put it on her wet clothes without caring whether it was clean or not. Hurry, hurry, go to my room. Reinhardt, go find a hat to put on Bruce's head and get him a coat. Harley, you stay here to take care of Sherlock and the other two. Laura, cheer me up. You only have 30 seconds. The moment the call was connected, the director frowned slightly as he looked at his elite team on the screen. Anna, what's going on over there? Facing the director's inquiry, Anna forced a standard smile on her face and answered, nothing, director, I just took a shower after exercise. After listening to Anna's words, the director raised his eyebrows and asked again, so what's the situation with Bruce? He looks like he was beaten up by someone. Anna felt that her CPU was about to be overclocked to the point of smoking, and her brain was working rapidly. She thought of a reason to answer the director, and said to the director on the screen with a smile, that's right, it was the fighting practice with Bruce. As a pilot, Bruce wanted to have more self-protection ability, so he insisted on dragging me to practice fighting. After hearing Anna's explanation, a trace of confusion flashed in the director's eyes, and he didn't know whether he should refute it for a moment. After all, you are a pilot and a vehicle driver, and you don't need to perform ground missions, so why practice fighting? But thinking about the strange personalities of this group of people, the director really couldn't tell for a moment whether Anna was perfunctory or true. Fortunately, at this time, the White House staff couldn't wait any longer. He didn't come to listen to the gossip inside the K, so he directly led the topic in the right direction. Okay, Mr. Director, I think we should focus on some important things instead of wasting time on these insignificant little things. As the officials from the White House spoke, the whole meeting finally began to develop in the normal direction, and Anna secretly breathed a sigh of relief, finally fooling around. In fact, it is not surprising that Anna is so nervous. After all, K has no law enforcement power in the United States. This is because the task was assigned to K according to the unspoken rule that whoever discovers it first gets the credit. If the people in the White House find something wrong, Anna swears that this group of people will not care about the unspoken rules and will directly assign this task to Phobble and those idiots. Of course, if Phobble is really assigned to Phobble, then if he is meritorious, then the credit this time will all belong to Phobble, and no one will remember that they arrested Anton. But if Phobble makes a mistake and causes an irreversible mistake, then all the faults will be K's. After all, Phobble took over halfway and had no idea what happened. And the most important thing is, isn't it because K's intelligence was not clear that the real nuclear bomb was not captured, but became a threat to the safety of the United States? Especially when both sides dislike each other, kicking someone when they are down is a minor offense. Anna definitely didn't want to do something like this where you take the credit and I take the blame. So Anna and her team members were so nervous about the joint video conference between the White House and the director. But what no one expected was that just when everyone thought that the matter was finally settled and they could have a meeting at ease, an accident still happened. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.